Committee members, when I call your name, please answer. Present, Stephanie Arroyo,
Present.
Adem Brija,
Present.
Jocelyn Cruz, David Giordano,
Present.
John Green here, Christina Johnson, Wilfredo Lopez,
Here.
Jessica Morris,
Here.
Beverly Pavon,
Present.
Claudia Perez, Cynthia Ramos,
Present.
Dawn Sanders,
Present.
Roberta So,
Here.
Candy Vivas Vasquez, Jason Wu. We have four.
Okay, great. With that said, if I don't see any objections, we will adopt the agenda for this month. All right, seeing no objections, then this month's agenda has been adopted. If I don't see any objections to the committee minutes from our June meeting, we will approve them with the correction that I believe Cynthia and Dawn were present at the June meeting. Okay, then seeing no objections, the meeting minutes from our June meeting have been approved. Before we get into announcements and informational updates, I think our chair Xavier is on, so Xavier, if you want to unmute yourself and say what you'd like to say. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Just want to say welcome back. Thank you to John and Dawn, who led this committee during our last term. I wanted to welcome Adem Brihab, who is transitioned from license and permits chair over to housing. John will be serving as our vice chair. I want to say thank you for all of your work, your effort, and your leadership. I want to also welcome everyone back. Looking forward to a very successful term. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm getting ready to head out to another event to represent us, but I look forward to seeing you at the barbecue. So bring your A game. Quick reminder on that, and have a great meeting. And I'm around if there are any questions. Just reach out and shoot me an email.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, we're gonna go into announcements and informational updates. So on September 24th, I guess that's our full board meeting. So CB11 will hold public hearings on the Statement of District Needs and Budget Requests fiscal year 2026, which we're gonna talk about later in today's meeting. Exciting stuff. And then number 2 is land use applications related to the proposed Beacon mixed use development project. I want to actually, before we even get into the next phase, this kind of ties in. I'm going to go around. I want everyone to share their goals, and I'm going to go last. But since this is here, I wanted to bring it up because it relates to one of my goals. I think a lot of times, like I don't know, land use seems to get the exciting stuff. They get the new developments coming in there. They get to give the recommendation. But I was thinking about a lot of these, and I'm on land use. Jessica's on land use. Maybe Beverly's on land use. A lot of these developers and property managers, they have existing properties in the neighborhood already. And I don't think there's an adequate check by the board, or there hasn't been, on those developers and what they're doing in their existing properties before they're getting the opportunity to develop a new one. So in the case of the Beacon, I looked and I asked Angel, and he said, Ascendant is the developer. And so I went on HPD's website and I went to Ascendant. They have their portfolio. And I just ran a few of their properties. I think they have a few on 101st Street. And yeah, and you start to see like 160 complaints. A lot of them closed, but closed or not, that's 160 complaints since 2024. I think it was like, and don't hold me to this, I think it was like a 10-unit building. So that's disturbing. I didn't go fully down that rabbit hole yet, but I just wanted to at least have some information. So I talked to Jason, actually, chair of land use, before this meeting, because I didn't want them to feel like we would be kind of going behind their backs or going around them. And I haven't had a fully fleshed out discussion with him. But what my idea is that we'd be the first line of defense for these new developments. And I'd almost appreciate if land use made that a requirement of developers or property managers coming to the board. And what we would do is, we do this ahead of time, right? We're not going to give them one meeting to come to. We'll lay out 3 months, 3 meetings. The demands are they send somebody, and ahead of time, they send somebody that has answers. And we'll say, we're interested in complaints, we're interested in violations. So they can't send someone to a meeting like so many people have done in the past that don't have answers, and then I'll get back to you and get answers, and then they just run the clock out and we never get a chance to really comment. And I kind of want us to start like developing almost a report card that we pass on to land use. And we just ask them to take that into consideration when they're actually looking at these land use applications. And with that being said, like Jessica and Beverly, obviously, as well as myself, we all kind of bridge that gap to land use. So I'd look to lean on you two as well to just kind of help me with that. And, you know, I even feel like we'll bring it up at land use if you're okay with it. So that's one idea, and I just wanted to touch on that because that was one of our announcements, and this is a project that I definitely think I would want to start that with. If anybody knows of more pressing ones, I'll look into it, but I'm open ears. And then if there's any questions or comments on that before we get into the next part of our discussion, the floor is open.
I love that idea,
Thank you.
but what I'm wondering is, although the developers develop the building, it's someone else who's managing.
Property managers too. Yes, 100%. So both, right? Yeah, definitely. Because I agree with you. Developers are in and then they're kind of out.
Yeah,
And then property managers, are the ones that get stuck with it. But at the same time, I think, and I could be wrong, developers or the owners of the buildings will pick their property manager. But I kind of want to hold them on the hook too, right? Like, if you keep picking a property manager that's not doing a good job, then you're not even doing your due diligence. But I agree. If I didn't say that, it's both property managers and developers. And I agree, because the property managers have more of a tied in relationship with the tenants, and after all that is our concern. So, all right, great. So obviously, every goal is flexible. These are all new. Some are gonna work better than others. But we gotta start somewhere on some of these things. So with that said, then we will move into presentations and discussions. So I already shared one of my goals, but we have committee discussion on goals for the 2024-2025 meeting session. So I'm gonna go around the table, no pressure. If you haven't thought about it, it's okay. I didn't do my reading during the summer, so I'm not gonna hold it against anyone. If you don't have a goal, all I'll ask is that you think about a goal. I think I shared my, you can always text me your goals. We'll talk about them next month. But we'll go around. If you don't have a goal, just say I'll pass. If you have a goal, I'd love to hear it. I think we all would. So Stephanie,
oh, I have to be the first one,
okay, I'll go the other way.
please.
David. You're new to this committee too, right? Beverly, you wanna go first?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think one of the things when I've been on this board for a long time, we used to have maps up there that showed all the affordable housing or subsidized housing that was now approaching 40, 50 years, where would be paid off in that open market. I am a child of parents that made the decision to buy the Mitchell Llama in '67 versus the Brownstone. It was 3,000, it was 10,000. They spent the 3,000 much Puerto Rico, had a good time. But I think particularly this community has always been a community of immigrants, people that have settled here, and increasingly they're settling here again, right? And one of the things I did when I researched some stuff for a thing I did at work was that it talked about how this is the only neighborhood immigrants could afford. Right? And we know that that's even being priced out. As I've been now, my mother lived in East Harlem, my grandmother and grandfather settled here from Puerto Rico and Italy. And then when I came here, I've seen in the 19 years that I've worked at Children's Aid here in East Harlem, the change in housing and how affordable housing is still here, but it's mainly what's left in the project, and even that ain't, the nitrogen facilities. And how we addressing the need as we continue on to open up opportunities for Mitchell-Lama, for other families and those things. I was fortunate, my father was able to buy the Mitchell-Lama out. We won't even get into that, but that helped create wealth. And I think, education and all these things are great for wealth, but I think our country's been built on who has property. And wealth is property. And it only increases. So I would, my thing is really, my own personal goal is to learn more about housing, right? But I've always had the passion to create those opportunities for the families. I work with the children, but also for the families. So.
Thank you.
No, that's all.
No, I mean, I like that. Loretta?
Okay, good evening. This is my first year part of this housing committee. It's pretty, I'm kind of interested in it. One of my goals is to know more about the committee and its function within the community. How does it, because I'm in a natural project. I started out in the tenement on the west side of Harlem, born and raised in Harlem. And I'm on the east side, and I live in a natural development. And I see the development go through changes. And now we're at this point where we're one of those developments that are being purchased or already assigned to that, right? And I just wanna know how the committee works with developers that are under that management. It's supposed to be turned over next year. But it's been like, back and forth. Don't know who's nature, who's that. So I wanna know, my goal is to know more about how effective this housing is and how the residents with those decisions.
Okay, sounds great. Beverly?
Okay, my goals is to, I love how we, I think it's important to every community and the wealth of the residents of the community. So my main goal is home ownership. I think that from what I'm reading for research is that only like, I think 7% of New York City or New York State is home ownership. It's probably less here in El Barrio, you know, so I'm for home ownership. I think that most of the programs, in fact, all the programs I've seen thus far being on the committee has always been for rentals. And as long as you have rental properties more so than home ownership, we're gonna be at the mercy of landlords. So we need some type of balance. The city has some programs for home ownership, but some of those programs thus far have been out of the reach of the people within our community. Because when they do the status of how much the income is for our community, it's not enough in order for us to have home ownership. I know the Senate, Cordell cleared time and worked with some programs where they give programs for tenants to have the opportunity to buy their buildings and stuff like that. But HPD also has one, and one that they have been putting on the back burner is the tenant interim lease program. Because we also know that the city is the biggest landlord of property owners in the city. And I know that recently the mayor has just made an announcement that he wants all the agencies to look at all the properties that that's in their grass that they have control of, to look to see whether or not any of their properties can be used for housing. So I think this is a great opportunity to push the issue that any city-owned properties also include a large number of home ownership, so we can have some type of balance between the people that's here that needs to have affordable housing, and the opportunity for wealth, for generational wealth. So I think that the total program, which is already on the books, is something that needs to be at least thought about to be established, since the city under HBD owns the properties already. Instead of the program they have, the ANCP program, and the other program that they have for I think it's HOP that we did for 51 West, 51 East, 125th Street. But the incomes for that is very high, you know, so we need something that's gonna help address the residents that's lower than those income brackets, especially if they live in HPD or any city-owned properties, you know, because they already got the land. They don't have to request it, they don't have to do anything. All they have to do for most of the price of this would be for them to give the money for it being developed. And that's a scope of work that they put out. They pay the contractor straight out and give the opportunity to the tenants and the residents in East Harlem for home ownership. And since if home ownership here is so low, I think it would be great for us to push the envelope with all the programs that the state and the city has to push for affordable home ownership programs. And let's be the first one that kick that off in the city.
Sounds great. I think, and maybe even in conjunction with that, like, because I mean, I was talking to John before the meeting, you know, there's a lot of things I think about owning homes that you don't know till you own a home, right? And you don't wanna, you know, and I'm all for what you're saying, but to make it sustainable as well, it's good to start getting that out there, connecting people, resources, same way we've done it with like credit services and this and that. Just
Exactly.
because it's one thing to give affordable home ownership to you, it's another thing to make sure they're able to keep it and hold
Right,
on to it,
Right,
so.
right.
All right,
So
but
that goes
I'm
hand in hand, yeah.
I'd love to be the first people to kick something like that off and really get it going, so definitely top of the list right now, I think, John?
Well, my goal is basically rather broad one and you the one word outreach. Thing is that whether it's getting helping immigrants settling here, because the thing is that as James Garcia used to say about businesses, they are our neighbors and we do represent them. So anything that we can do for them, we should. Whether it's helping people who have gotten bad advice through 421A or Nigeria. The thing is that we be able to reach out to people who need help and basically make things a little better for them. And that's basically my goal.
Right, thank you. Cynthia?
A couple. This is my second year here. I was here last year. I had missed a couple meetings due to childcare, and then a couple meetings that I came to were canceled. So I feel like I didn't experience enough, which I'm looking forward to this year and with you again. So my concern is senior housing. I didn't hear anybody mention senior housing last year unless it happened at a meeting I wasn't. I haven't seen anybody mention it at all in none of the projects and buildings that were being developed. I work for an affordable housing company, so I manage waiting lists and I see and I hear the frustration of seniors calling. Where I have a list that's already at 450 with no vacancies. You know, and they call, you know, I'm gonna die before, you know, and it's sad, it breaks my heart. You know, and I just, you know, have to tell them, you know, you just have to wait, we'll contact you when it is available. You know, but the reality is that it might never happen. You know, and it's sad, it's really, really sad.
I think that's a great call. You have another one? I think you said you had a couple, or?
Yeah, and the other one is outreach, I agree, I also get phone calls from people that don't, for example, okay. I work in re-rentals, so we have re-rental apartments, we also do Housing Connect with the new properties. So they're two different things, people get confused, they don't know. I submitted an application, you know, I won the lottery. It's really hard to, I think people need, let me say it correctly. They need education, it's, you know, to know what to expect when your number is reached and you're not prepared, you will be rejected. After all those years of waiting, you missed the appeal time, there is nothing we can do, and HPD is very strict on that. They'll move right to the next one, there's no, that's, you know, just education. Bank statements, like have clean bank statements, you know, things like that, it's knowledge for everyone.
I like that, and I even think, well, I'm sure HPD has their reasons to some extent, because I guess if somebody's not prepared, how long do you hold it off till you go to the next one? But I'm not for such a, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. That's absurd.
If it's harder, HPD, there's different, they want to take that one counts weekends and one does not.
I mean, coming from my other committee, there's less, people, you get a cannabis license and not have to open a business for a year. And now you're talking, you know what I mean? And now you're talking about, you don't have your papers, and then you're running a business, you know?
Right.
So that's, I look at that twofold. One is to educate them, and two is maybe to get HPD to the table and be like, look, there's gotta be a happy medium, right? Between 10 days and too long. That's a big gap. I wasn't even aware of that time frame. So.
That is the big, you can take a year to help people get high, but you only need 10 days to get a place.
No,
Sometimes more than 10 extensions.
how
but it's
many
really
is
up
it?
to who's processing it.
It's 3 months?
Well, the process, if you get selected from the lottery,
Yeah,
then you have 10 days to get back to them, or sometimes they write to you. And if you miss, you got sometimes 3 days, 5 days, it depends how quick you need to have that turnaround, especially the re-rentals. They're out there for 5 days on the lottery phase, and after that, it's out of and then they'll call you 2, 3 weeks later so that they can do the process. So that process usually takes about, if you're doing the marketing after the whole lottery, like about 3 weeks, and then after the 3 weeks, they'll contact everybody that are the priority list. And then once they exhaust for that priority list, meaning the community board, the municipal disabilities, all those people, that if you get called and then, you missed even by 1 day, you have to ask for an appeal. And I gotta tell you, I gotta say, it can be successful. It's brutal. The brutal part is waiting for HPD and HDC to tell you if you got in or not.
that's always the worst, the
And
way.
then I told them that they have a bottleneck right there. They're the ones that give anxiety to the people, because sometimes you give in on your documents and then DOI will say, well, you need to explain your Zelle. You need to explain, and this is the thing that a lot of people didn't know. That it's your Zelle, your WhatsApp, your Cash App, anything you're getting extra than your regular general account,
PayPal.
guess what? They wanna see what is that. And then to make sure that you don't have another additional income that you're not saying on that lottery.
And we have 2 presidential candidates that don't want, service workers to pay tips. We have this extreme here.
Because they don't know anything about the housing, although you got a housing mogul running.
Yeah, define mogul.
Okay.
Okay, I think HPD needs to come.
Was marketing, no properties. I don't do marketing into the re-rentals, so we have different, and our waiting lists are internal, so we handle them ourselves. So it's really up to my director, like if she wants to give an appeal, granted, do you have a good reason?
Right.
Yes, sometimes if they have somebody that has all their paperwork, we don't have to go and log number order and re-rentals. But whoever submits first, everything. Marketing, Housing Connect, you have to go and log number order. People don't know that as well. They think, oh, I got a letter. I have all this time to, for re-rentals to submit. The unit goes to somebody who handed it in 2 days earlier. And they're back on the waiting list, waiting for the next available unit.
So I think that's I like broad goals, and then I like highly specific ones. I think that. Yeah, I think we get HPD here, not once, but I think some of us are very familiar with the process, but I think we get them to come lay out the exact process, and then we tell them what we think, right? Which is, it's way too penal from what I'm hearing. And, like you just said, the appeal process in and of itself is, whether it's successful or not. I mean, imagine that level of stress. I can't imagine it, to get a housing, and then we talk about mental health in this.
Exactly, and then on top of that, if they reject you, you can still go and do another appeal, which is a complaint to HPD. That stops the clock, or it gives you the time. I gotta say that we've been successful. And when I say we, the community has gotten people that we called HPD and, we contacted the.
But you shouldn't have to fight that hard, is what I'm saying.
I understand that, but because there's a competition, remember, this is a housing lottery. And then you know how many people apply, like millions of people.
No, I understand that, and it's a competition, in my opinion, till you get picked, and then you're kind of out of the competition, and now,
You don't even know how.
but you're not really out, because now you got all this other stuff going
Right,
on.
and.
And then, I mean, I don't know, I know appeal processes are different, but I know how the city can move with certain appeals I've dealt with, and those aren't even that important, so, all right, thank you. Jason?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Wu. Just for people who don't know me, I'm a housing advocate by background. I've been a legal services attorney for about 13, 14 years. In terms of my goals, one of them is for this committee to continue to support legislative changes, especially at the state level. And so in the past, we've issued resolutions in support of different legislative bills that strengthen tenant protections in New York State. And so I think we should continue to do that. And the second goal is for us, especially as a housing committee, to ensure that the City of Yes proposal is modified, amended, or opposed in its current formulation especially the issue around the infill development, like potentially nature properties, which has no affordability restrictions on what gets built. And so we've talked about this earlier this year, and so it's something I think we need to be really vocal and organized about.
Okay, thank you. Sound like that one sounds like a very specific agenda item that we can dive into, you
I
know.
wrote it down, that's not, that's cheating.
What? Well, thank God for YouTube now. I'm gonna go and watch all these, I'm gonna make like Instagram clips of everybody so I can remember them, but that's, I don't wanna make promises, but I feel like that's something we can start discussing next month. That's a very,
Yeah,
and we don't need, we can kind of have that talk with, at the table on our own, so thank you.
and we kind of have to hurry because the vote is gonna be in here.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's put it on next month, because I don't think we have to. The good thing about some of these is we can just have that discussion, we can pass a resolution, we can make a decision. And honestly, sometimes I don't really care to have somebody else at the table, you know, I'm gonna say, so I'm gonna go to Jessica. We will have presentations when we need them. I'm frankly sick of them everywhere. It seems very agenda driven by whoever's coming. And they can get boring and we can tune out. And I just think whoever's listening to a presentation would be somebody who would read it if it was just given to us. Like, it's a PowerPoint with everything up there. If you're not listening to it now, you're not gonna read it, and if you're gonna listen to it, you would read it. So it's always like a giant waste of time. We put them at the beginning of our meetings because we wanna be courteous to the people attending, and then by the time we gotta do business, we're all exhausted, which is like how full board works, and I've been pushing on that forever. I'm tired of the 1.5 hours of public officials, elected officials only coming when they need to come. Some of them are good, some of them only come when they need to come, and then they send, you know, somebody with no answers or telling us about what they've done, and then 2 hours later, we're having a public hearing, you know, that nobody really has the energy for. So that's, I kind of want to start that here and send that message to the rest of the board that, like, we have a lot of work to do. So, and I'm not saying there's not a value to presentations, and if anybody has something they want to be presented, I'm open to it. Don't expect too many from me unless I really think we need it. Jessica? I'll go to you.
So, my name is Jessica, most of you know, I've served on the board for about 5 years, the police found for a decade, I don't know how that happens. Right, thank God for stabilized housing, the only reason I still have my apartment. Number 67 on the lottery for 7 Day Street, and I worked a little bit of overtime during COVID doing contact tracing, so you know what? Yeah, disqualified. So let's fight for some gray area for people in their real lives. So I want to be on time for meetings. It's my goal. And make sure that I fill out that form if I need to for the disability thing, right? And make sure I volunteered to produce some minutes. So if you took some good notes during the meeting and want to make sure they get noted in the minutes, please send them to me in any way you can. Snap a picture with your phone, do whatever, send it and file them. Again, I applaud your interest in bridging that space between land use and housing. I didn't bring it up then, but I want to now, and I'll go real quick, because I think I boiled it down to 4 things that I want to bring to the table to the committee this year. There's you know, we not only have developers who are hungry to continue doing their thing in East Harlem. For better or worse, there are long-standing landlords, property owners who have issues of neglect in their buildings. Warehousing, these things have always been here, and I you know, the due diligence of engaging and figuring out how to tip those scales and have conversations. I would like to see that happen. So that means doing some legwork. I mean, I'm on board for doing that. I think that you know, it's coupled with this preservation thing that doesn't happen as much as it should in land use, that housing, preserving housing is, you know, they're thinking about on Lexington Ave, 109, 110. There's a lot of housing on the east side of the street that if someone doesn't care about, will become something else soon. And I think there's a landlord there who knows what they have, but doesn't know what to do as far as energy efficiency upgrades and all of the tax incentives for do, so does that happen here? Kind of. Not really, but it might. The other one I want to bring to the table is, Metropolitan Hospital has a program for building housing, on their campuses for high-need populations. Because they recognize that if you serve a high-need population, whereby you reduce, insurance costs. So there are all sorts of players for targeted age-related populations. They've got land, lots of it. So are we in a position to say, what are you thinking about there? And to start to advocate for housing to happen before they decide it's time for housing. So, and then, Beverly, I think, echoing your peers' advocacy for affordable homeownership, and finding opportunities for pilot programs or ways to show that things are possible before they're mainstream. That happens here a lot in the history of East Africa. Recognizing that something needs to happen and figuring out how to get to a place where we can. I would like to contribute to that thinking with you if possible. And then the last one is, David, you said maps. You said maps, understanding our neighborhood. So much is happening, and I would like to be able to kind of, whether it's compile a deck every quarter of kind of things that are going on so that we as a body can digest and be in the know as much as possible. What that is made of, I don't know yet, but I know that there's lots out there going on here. So some way to visualize it, to look at it and say, whoa, that's important. So those are a lot of goals, but starting being on time and producing on time minutes.
I think they're all great goals. I mean, my number one goal, and I didn't say it, was getting attendance, so I agree with you. No, and we've all, I had like an 8-month stretch where I didn't come to meetings during COVID, and I was depressed, so that's why I said in my email, I know we all go through that, and, you know, I'm fortunate that people on here believed in me to, you know, kind of give me that second chance. Jessica, I like all your goals. I think the thing I like the most is the data collection and being data driven. I think we can sit here a lot of times and talk about how bad things are, and they are, and what's unfair and what's going on. But like, when we see numbers and we see it on paper, it's not just what we start to believe, but it's what we can pass around and just go, look, this is not how we feel, this is a fact, right? So there's feelings and facts. I think in the case of us, they're actually intertwined, but let's just show that. You know, I come from licenses. I didn't build the database, but we had a very nice database on there with the permits and the documents going back years for applicants, and we could cross-reference if somebody was kind of changing their hours behind our backs and not going through proper things. So, you know, I agree with you. I'd love if you could help me with that. Anyone else who wants to help, but I will dedicate some of my own time into helping put that together. I think we can figure out, let's say, the first one we want to kind of start with, what we want to collect. I mean, I had one off the top of my head too, just, we're not gonna get after all the small buildings or whatever. We gotta go and take out big ones, right? But finding big properties, like I just said, the ones with these developments, and start compiling violations, worst offenders. And I don't want them to feel like we're out to get them, right? But I want them to feel like we want to engage them, right? And be accountable. And, you know, because if you scare them away, they're gonna find an excuse not to come to the table. So let's, you know, draw them in with honey and then, you know, see what happens, you know? So, I'm gonna go to Will, but you had your hand up, David?
No, it was really just following up around the infill, but I'll wait till we have that further discussion.
All right.
Because we kind of, when we did have HP there, were you here, Angel, at that time with George? Was so prepared for them to come, and the community erupted. And some board members erupted, and we did not really get anything accomplished when they were here to discuss it. So it was at Children's Aid, and I remember, because I was going to shut down the board meeting was,
I checked.
yes.
Was this the one that's Stanley Isaacs or is this?
No, this one, that's from Zeta.
Yeah, no.
Bloomberg info.
Yeah, but which property were they looking at? Cause I know there's been.
Oh, there was Washington.
They tried to-
Farm,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Douglas
When the
Drive.
conversation was started, that they were looking at a few different sites.
And they, when we erupted and showed our butts, they calmly just said, very good, and walked out. I don't think we, but it was also something on my mind, something to come back to. So I'm glad, Jason raised it.
So, yeah, like I said, I think that'll definitely be an agenda item next month. Well,
Cool. For me, it's, to be a resource to this, committee. In any way that the committee sees fit, to make sure that we're achieving, the overall goals of this committee. More broadly, and this is aspirational. I would love for us to come up with a clear definition of what affordable housing is, right? When we hear the term affordable housing, affordable who is always the next line. So we know what our demographics are. We know what the incomes are. We also know the AMI calculations are flawed, especially for East Harlem. So it'd be great is that as a committee, we draw a line and say, okay, this is where it's affordable for the people that live here. And this is where it's not affordable. And determine the validity of projects based on those metrics. Even though we can't hold them, legally accountable to it, we can hold ourselves accountable to saying, this is the line. This is where affordability lies, and this is how we're going to be able to create new housing that is actually beneficial to the community, as opposed to creating new housing that doesn't benefit the community.
great.
Easy enough, right?
No, but that's, like you said, we've been talking about that for years.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've heard that since I joined the board, actually, since my dad was on the board, so.
Years and years, that it's recognized that AMI is so not in tune with real places and real people. I think, I liaison it down at the New York Fed and their community development teams, their connections to all sorts of housing developers, housing advocates. And thinking that you can't impact the unsolvable thing that's been the way it's been for 50 years. At some point it's time, right? We'll figure out a way to do something that's better than what doesn't work for everybody. So to bring it up and say, we really want to do this, I think, it's congressional level action. We can, it's not local, but it's something that our voice can be heard. So
And again, we can't necessarily change Congress's mind like in one term.
Yeah.
But we could say, look, for Community Board 11, this is what affordable housing is, and this is how we're going to determine, when it makes sense for us to give it an approval, when we're asking for any sort of changes. And when to outright say we reject this because 170% of AMI is not affordable to anybody. Like, period, that's not affordable. And unfortunately, that housing tends to get built more often, not only in East Harlem, this is a citywide problem.
Right.
But we're the most affected because,
Yeah. We have the lowest, income in Manhattan.
and it's,
Per capita.
yeah.
Yeah, it's skewed the wrong way. Yeah.
I bought you as much time as I could.
I guess for me personally, I want to make sure that I'm more present at the meetings. I feel like, although I was present at my district leads meeting, I wasn't here all the time and there was too much going on in my life. So now that I have less on my plate, I hope to be more present. Overall, when it comes to housing, I think someone else said it, there's a lack of education, there's a lack of connection, there's a lack of outreach. We are the most resource rich district, right? We have all these resources, yet somehow these resources don't get connected to the people who need it, right? Or there are other barriers, like you said, 10 days where no one knows what to do within 10 days. Who do you reach out to within 10 days when non-for-profits are so overwhelmed with the constituents that they have that they can't see you in 2 weeks. They're giving you a meeting next month.
Yeah.
Right. So, and also understanding which of these groups and non-for-profits in our district are actually educating our community, are actually giving these services, because they get a lot of funding from the city and the state, and some of them are not working with our community. So I think that's something that we can definitely do. I think that's an easy lift, because we do get the complaints about, oh, well, I went to this person. We tell them, go to this non-for-profit, they'll help you, and well, they said they couldn't, or they said there was this barrier or that barrier, right? Also understanding those barriers, so we can ask our elected officials, hey, maybe you need to change the way you're providing this funding, because this funding isn't really touching the constituents that it needs to touch. There's a lack of financial literacy in this district, right? People don't know, people aren't prepared, even if the opportunity comes up to be a homeowner, you're not prepared, you don't have a credit score, you don't know what a credit score is, you just aren't prepared, don't know how to do this, don't know how to make the payments. Our renters don't know how to make payments. Our renters don't understand sometimes their leases, because it's their first apartment and they don't even know where I'm supposed to sign. What is a legal rent? What does this mean? I think we're not educating our people enough, and if we at least give them the skills and the education, like at least that, we're not here forever. This community keeps changing. We get new elected officials who may care, don't care, do care. We just have to make sure that we give the people the education that they need, so they can provide that skill and that foresight for the next group of people. And that's really, legislation. So I'm biased. I love city legislation. And in September, there's going to be, I can't remember the date. I want to say it's the 18th, but I could be lying to you guys. There's going to be a hearing on evictions. There have been a lot of evictions. People are in rent arrears. You guys know that the court system is bottle capped, because you don't have to go to court, or you can't. Well, Fredo could probably explain this better, but like you don't have to go to court if you're in rental arrears unless you have an attorney, right? Or something of that nature, or you.
No, you can still go, but you're talking about, like right to counsel?
Yeah, right to counsel,
This is more your, this is what you do.
Mhm.
But yeah, right to counsel, so the city passed legislation and funded for there to be a certain number, like at a certain threshold of income, they will provide you a housing attorney. If you are above that, you can pay for an attorney, or you can represent yourself, or you can also seek advice in certain circumstances. If you want to jump in, because I know this is your bread and butter. If there's anything I misstated or.
They call it right to counsel, but it's subject to funding and staff.
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not be.
So there's that, right? So we have this great program that has no funding, right? That's something that we can be advocating, because I definitely know that our constituents aren't getting the service, right? Not only that, but now we have landlords who can't get their rent because we're not going to court and things aren't moving.
I'll just one thing on the legal services piece, there was $25 million cut from the AHTP funding. And so that program funds legal service organizations to do like tenant harassment type building work, and so that funding has been reduced. And so that's something I think maybe we will advocate restoration of funding for.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the only thing, that's my connection with district needs and housing.
I'm great. I'm happy I gave you so much time, because you came up with some great ideas. So thank you for all of that. Candy?
So, hi, I'm Candy first. Definitely having be more present this year, pray to God, in my house. But if anything, I'm still want to participate in every level, because, it's like I see free housing. So it's two kind of conflicting as, housing provider and developing and then providing services as well. We get a little bit of everything. I deal also with landlords as well. So, it's like we mediate, but we also see the two sides of every story to see how we can actually get them to work something out with the tenants rather than to do the full eviction. We try to do eviction prevention and helping out, the landlord as well as the tenant to get them the understanding. One, we have a lot of tax credit buildings. So when you're talking about education, it's really important that people understand when they're getting into a building, what kind of building they're getting into. What type of funding this building has that gives you different type of requirements to keep you to stay in that apartment. And a lot of people don't understand that if you have tax credits, then everybody thinks, oh man, the more money I make, that means my rent is gonna go high. It's not going anywhere. It's just gonna stay at what it's allocated and approved, right? But then when you're doing the renewal, they don't understand the recertification from the lease signing. And that's where you can, people are going to court just for that, which is pretty stupid because you actually, let me rephrase that word stupid, but
It's okay.
it's pretty, no, we're not sure what we're actually doing. I've helped so many people last year going to court just because they didn't do the recertification. And then they thought it was because they signed their lease, they didn't have to recertify, but instead of also, management has to educate the people as well. And it goes hand in glove, right? So you don't have to come to our office so I can look and say, what you're going to court for is not because you're not paying your rent, it's a holdover, because you're not submitting the documents that are required by law with the, tax credit, or section 8, everybody gets that confused with re-signing their lease and recertifying. We have to educate our people to let them know what it is that they're actually, getting into in that development. And what is expected of them, because a lot of people sign a lease, but they're not looking at it.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And, yeah, and then on top of that, what I'd like to see is follow up with every building that we've supported, that they've, already got developed, and how many people from our community really got in.
I like that.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
to really follow up and hold them to the T on that. And especially the ones that have mixed use housing, that they say they're gonna also have community commercial spaces. Who are you actually renting out in our community that is going with those fundings that you're gonna get along as amenities, and we're not getting that,
I like that.
There's, so the education piece, we need to do that, even if it's just, maybe we can put it posted up in our own website. Maybe it's not a lot, but I know that HPD is constantly changing, and this is where the education piece is like, today is a new law, right? And they'll change, especially for returning citizens coming in and applying, because before they were rejecting them, once on that application, it said, when you ever incarcerated or convicted, yes, once they see that, oh, disqualified.
Yeah.
Now, they can't do that, and a lot of people still don't know that that one is supposed to change the application, period. The whole application has to be changed according to the HUD rules. So there's a lot of changes that HUD is doing, HPD is doing, and the state. So we need to make sure that even though they don't talk to each other, that we get the same information, that we can help educate our own people and ourselves. Because that information we receive, we can also help everybody else as well. So,
No,
I mean, there's a lot more, but I don't wanna be so long-winded,
Oh.
but, as far as, home ownership is the same thing. So we need to find out, and, we have some renters that are on the TIL program, actually, they're already on the HDFC side, and a lot of them are not having their meetings. The president is doing whatever, he's doing, took over the whole building, has the whole entire family living in there, as people get vacating or leaving or they pass away. People don't realize that they're not, renters, they're shareholders, they have more rights than what any tenant has. And a lot of them, as they get older, they forget that, so when they say, well, I owe rent, and I'm like, no, you're a shareholder. You have to participate and make sure that they're giving you the reports, especially their management that is managing their buildings. They're not getting that, that's
Yeah.
not happening, and the truth is, you have is supposed to be the gatekeeper of that, and that's not being done, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but it's their responsibility if you get this money, like Stephanie says, there's a lot of groups that get money to help out on the housing piece, and it's not being done. And by a disclaimer, I do wanna say that even though we're housing ambassadors with the Block Association, we don't get no money from HPD for being housing ambassadors, okay? So, we do this because it's more of a passion, and it's more for everybody else in our community to make sure they get in. And if they are getting in, we do accept people by appointments, but if you tell me, or you say, hey, I got a lottery and I need to upload information, then that supersedes everybody. We take out the time and we do that and upload and make sure and stay there. Even if they say, you got rejected, we continue to then do the complaint. We explain to the families what's going on. We have a lot of foreign families that are applying and getting into these lotteries, and because of language barrier, thank God for Google language.
Yeah.
I'm able to discuss things with families, you know? But it's just a matter of how we communicate to make sure that housing is a right for everybody. So we can't just take it for granted that it's just the Spanish and English community. We're more than that. So we need to expand our language barriers and just make sure that we can break that down and be helpful. We get people from all sorts of different languages, but I get HPD to send me all their literatures, different languages. And you know, applications is basic, so you already know what it is. So you just give them the paper and you just go along with it. I mean, it's just that there's a lot of changes in this community and we need to go along with it and how we can cater to everybody else. Because it's all the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you about educating people. I also think that sometimes people shouldn't have to be that educated on these things. I mean, the same way like we say, oh, we all have jobs here, shouldn't be that complicated. People have lives and stuff. Like there has to be we have to figure out a way to try to bridge that gap between educating people and also the level of communication going to them. Like you should just know what you have to sign. Like what you just said was great, but also confusing. And so I can only imagine how confusing that could be. And then the stress of it and all of that. It's a lot. I mean, again, a lot of it seems to relate this stuff to like licenses. But you watch stuff stress people over a liquor license and like, it's, hard to feel as bad as for this, where it's like a basic need, like your housing. So I think that, I agree, but it's a twofold thing. It's education, it's finding ways to, I'm not gonna say that these processes don't need to be there, but everything
It's too
seems,
much.
I'm a believer that everything's been overcomplicated to create jobs for people. Like the law got so, forgive me about, I know you're a lawyer, but like, I'm always in court with my dad and stuff, and the law is extremely complicated to the point where it's like beyond complicated for like trademark stuff. So I think everything can be, I'd like to cut through some of the red tape. I'd like to get some of these agencies here at the table, explain to them, this is happening because you're doing it this way. You're not. And if you continue to do it this way and don't explain yourself, it almost seems like maybe this is an intended consequence. I don't know.
Listen, we get people crying because they're so desperate, but then they don't hear from them at all. So what I normally do, if we don't make the call, and they'll say, okay, so, I'll have staff or I'm myself, because I roll up my sleeve and I do the work too. And I call them up and I'm like, listen, I'm following up on this client, XYZ log number, what's going on? We haven't heard from you, what's happening? Every document is uploaded and sent to you. Is there anything that is missing? And sometimes the dumbest thing, oh, well, they forgot to sign a doc. Well, then say that. Why wait 2 weeks to do that? And then you're telling them that you're rejecting them.
Yeah.
But it's because you're not responding to them at all. And then most of the people are working from home. You know how long it takes for somebody, if I'm gonna call an agency or anybody, I can call them before I leave.
And you're
Because I
still-
know tomorrow morning I'm gonna hear from them, or the following day. And if I'm not on top of them, then the paper trail is email, and call, and then they'll call us, or either they'll get in touch with them because they know that there's a third party. It shouldn't be that there's supposed to be a third party in order for someone to provide the services that they should be getting.
I'm gonna ask you, and you don't have to do it for next month, but like a lot of what you said, I think if you could maybe write it out, identify it on a list, say like specific agencies that are responsible for this and what the, okay, that's it. All right. Okay, but I'm saying like, okay, fine, but like lay out the process, explain where the hiccups are happening, because when they come here, if we're gonna have them come. And I remember, and then I'm gonna go to Angel, I know that you might say, oh, and Dawn, right, I didn't realize Dawn was on. I remember way back, I think you were chairing land use and I was vice chair, this is a while back. They used to send this, and he was a nice guy, I don't blame him, but they would send the same guy to HPD, from HPD every month. And he never had answered, and that's why I go back to what I said before. We're gonna request it, we're gonna request in a way that, don't waste our time, send us someone who can answer these questions. And look, I know that some of these things, they could be understaffed, I understand that, maybe you're waiting a day because you're understaffed, but then that begs the question even more, why can't the processes be streamlined more? If you're burdened by this, then make it a little bit more simple, because it doesn't go hand in hand to have extremely complex processes and this level of being penal, and then telling you, oh, well, we can't get back to you, or like you said, like, they'll tell you a month later
Right.
when you were supposed to do it within 2 weeks. So, I mean, this is a system set up for people to fail.
Sounds like plan incompetence.
Yeah. Yeah, I just said, it seems, I'm not gonna say it's on purpose, but you can't say
feels-
it feels like it's.
Back in the days, remember, because I know you've been on this board for a long time, but,
They're gonna kick me off.
but, back, I gotta say, HPD has changed its ways than before. Because before, you wouldn't really have to have, they wouldn't really give you enough information. And anything that was given like a day before, and you had to rush to really find out anything that was going on. Or even if you wanted to know what was on the pipeline, if we didn't bring them in, we wouldn't know what's happening, you know? And then we'll find out at land use on a day before that we have to have, a decision so like that we can vote on it immediately, you know? But right now, the way HPD has been doing things since COVID, much to their credit, things have really changed in the way of like, if you're living with someone else, or the lease is not in your name, or it is under your name, but the landlord is not giving you, you don't have a lease. They'll let you have, rather than to do a credit check, they'll let you have then show all your receipts that you've been paying your rent for those 12 months.
Yeah.
So you can opt out. There's a lot of little wiggle worms that has happened that has made it a little bit much easier. It's just when it gets up there to their office, according to, the leasing agencies, then that's where the hole is.
All right, thank you. All right, yep,
But not, it's more like, information. In regards to, when I was speaking about the buildings, HPD is looking for housing with all the agencies and stuff like that, they have a task force. And, Maria, Torres Springer is the chair. I would ask that they include community board members on that task force. So we can get that information. It just started, the mayor just made that announcement maybe about 2 weeks ago. So that's something new. I know she's the chair. I don't know who else is the other members of that, but I think the community boards, if not, they've not, putting them in it. Let's request it from the community board level. That's going to be a part of that task force that you have to activate and find suitable buildings that the agencies have for affordable housing.
thank you. I'm gonna go to Dawn, and then, because we got this budget stuff too, but I'm gonna, go and look over to do minutes, but if any of you have points or like that, like you want to email me, just email the housing email. I will, because it's gonna be hard for me to remember all this, so if you have anything specific, email it to me. Yeah, that's it, basically. I don't know, I'm gonna talk to Angel more about it, but like, I don't know why we can't be passing resolutions and just pushing things forward and out there. We don't always have to wait. We don't have to be reactive. You know what I mean? We don't have to wait for someone to come to do it. We can be proactive with our resolutions and just start, like you gotta start from somewhere. All right, we're gonna go to Dawn. And then, Angel, I'd like to hear if you think there's anything that we should be focusing on as well. So Dawn?
Hi there. I don't think you can see me. Can you see me?
Yeah, we see you.
Oh, all right. I can't see myself through the screen. So I've been amening and clapping and putting stuff in the chat, which I'm not supposed to do because I'm really excited and energized about everything I've heard and feeling really good about that. So I first got appointed to the community board by Phil Reed. I think it was 2002 or something like that. So I think David Giordano was here before me and maybe Candy. What was that, 2003?
I'm 2009.
Oh, wow. I feel like you've been here.
I have been, I wasn't a board.
So I'm dating myself, but the thing that I'm most passionate about, along with all the stuff you guys said, is like Adim said, the facts. I'm really at this point really angry about groups that don't keep their promises or they switch up what they said, and the ability to go back and catch them in a lie is sometimes lost, right? Because we just don't have the time to go back. But you know, there was a time when we had a recipe for housing in this community where you couldn't build a building without adding parking spaces, parking under that building for the people who were coming new to the community. Now you can't even, if you say parking, you know, people start hissing and stuff, you know. So I just feel like we got a lot of we got a lot of promises along the way. Like we got promises that you know, we got a lot of promises along the way. And like Candy said, people build projects, they don't come to us, they don't tell us, they tell us at the last minute. So I really would love to see, my goal is to really start collecting and making people remember the promises that they made going back 20 years or 10 years or 5 years when they were trying to get us to agree to something. And then, you know, once we agreed or once the project is built, right, we're not going back and saying, okay, how many residents did you have? What amenities did you provide? What, you know, what are you doing to be a good neighbor, right? If you have troubled populations at your building, right? All those things I think play a part. So again, I am just really excited about what everybody's saying, and I was trying to amen and all that stuff. And some of my favorite people are in the room, and I'm just so happy to see you all. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Angel?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No, I will. I got plenty. So the first thing, just to be super clear, is that this is the housing committee, not the land use committee. Like Adam started his comments by saying that people get excited about land use stuff and not housing stuff. And this conversation bore that out. It is exciting to talk about a new project. It is exciting to talk about the evil developer. That's not what this committee is. This committee is talking about tenancy. I've been working here for 14 years. For the last 12 years, we have not talked about tenancy. And that's what this committee is supposed to be doing. So at the time when I first came on, this committee was very active talking about tenancy, was dealing with the property managers all the time, bringing people in, finding out details about how they're managing their properties, how their tenants are living in those properties. That's how I met Jason. That's how I met Beverly, right? Proactively going to these buildings to find out, oh, what the hell's going on? Unfortunately, Beverly's still dealing with her issue. But that's what the committee's supposed to be doing. And that's what I'm excited about this committee doing again. We have a lot more buildings already here than could ever be proposed to be developed. We have to engage those buildings, those property managers, those tenants, the tenant associations, the organizations that are organizing tenants, to find out for ourselves, to plug ourselves into knowing, not just hearsaying, but knowing what's actually happening in these buildings, so that then we can formulate whatever our positions are, what our recommendations are. Unfortunately, it's drudgery, right? And it's very difficult, and it's painstaking, and it's emotional to deal with the issues that our neighbors are dealing with in this neighborhood. But it's super important. So a developer puts up a building in 2020, and in 2024, we haven't spoken to them at all. That's on us. He has no motivation whatsoever, no inclination, no requirement, no responsibility to come back to us. Don't expect him to come. He's not going to come. He's going to come when you ask him, right? Maybe. Of his own volition, he's not coming, unless tomorrow he has another project. And then he wants to be, you know, your buddy until the next project, right? But absent that, you have to engage him. You have to call, again, mention Ascendant. Ascendant has been very proactive in coming to the land use committee. This committee has to be very proactive in paying attention to what's going on at land use. Because we do have affordable housing guidelines. We do have developers come in months before, years before their projects go on record. We do have some senior housing coming down the pipeline, and we're all busy, so it's impossible to keep it all, you know, at the front of mind. However, we are doing a bunch of stuff. Stuff is happening. We have to be aware of that stuff before we, you know, make declarations that nothing is happening. It's just not true, right? Because it's you that are doing it. It's this board's land use committee that is doing that. It's this board's human services committee and so on down the line that is doing that, that is engaging with these developers, that is having these conversations, that is making these points, that when people come to the board and say, my rent's too high, this is unaffordable, what is all this? We write it all down. You just don't listen for the sport of it, you write it down, so then when it comes time to have a conversation about what our, you know, what our guidelines are. Then Candy will say, well, hold on a second, last year, remember we said blah, 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 I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right, and then you write it, then you amend it, and then you fix it, and you put it through the, you know, through the mill and come out with something. So that then when we're dealing with developers, and developers call me, hey, Andrew, I have a project, I'm like, this first,
Right.
right? And then they come and respond to that. Now, it's a little bit of a chastising, sorry. We have a questionnaire at land use that we give to developers. They complete it. I collect it. I give it to y'all. Y'all don't read it. I can't do anything about it. Right? You have to read it. Right? We get notices for public hearings, for pending legislation. I'm happy to forward it. My inbox is all this stuff. Right? And I don't want to flood your inboxes, but that's how I can share the information. I can't call you all individually, right? So I'll send it to you. Someone has to read it, and someone has to say, hey, you know, here's an idea, or I read this, and I think the committee should do this, and here's a draft reso for, you know, you all to consider. That's what we should be doing, right? We should be talking to all these different organizations. We should be thinking proactively. The development stuff, if you're interested, amen, go to land use. Right? Because I'm sitting there for 2-3 hours talking about that stuff, and I'm happy to have you all participate and come in and engage the conversation. Something that Adem and I talked about at length in preparation for this meeting is that missing connection between land use and housing. Right? Somewhere along the line, it kind of split and housing started frankly faltering. We're going to pick it back up. There's 15 people here. This is the biggest committee on the board now. Right? So y'all are interested. I didn't put you here, like you asked. So great. So let's do that. There's a ton of buildings, break up all this work, and let's get to talking about those projects. And then when, you know, ABC such and such developer, we find out it's not, I won't even give I'll give a true life example. A couple of years ago, we had a board member named Andrew Padilla. A developer of Top Prop Equities came to us with an idea, right? With an idea, and this is the fact, right? Not to give ourselves a pat on the back. Developer came with an idea, 100, 200 apartments, affordable, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's like, yes, smiling ear to ear. It's about to close. The item's about to close on the meeting agenda. Andrew sticks his hand up at the last minute. Can you please tell us if you have any housing violations? That stopped the conversation and stopped the development. It's still not there. Because it turns out it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of open violations in multiple buildings. It was over, right? So like they got hit so hard because in fact, and you know, Xavier went with HPD on a site visit and went and saw it for himself. They got hit so hard, they haven't come back. And I want them to come back. I want those 200 apartments.
And you want them to fix it,
But they gotta fix the stuff with people already living in, right? And those are project-based Section 8 buildings that to pat this board, you know, on the back, years ago at this table, this committee gave the developer a really hard time, but proposal he had at that time, right? Right? Yeah, that's the same people. We want to put a new building up, X number of apartments, but super exciting, right? Like, oh, that's a lot of apartments. But they already had 4 project-based Section 8 buildings in hand that they were running into the ground. So the housing chair at that time, right, and Candy was on the committee too, gave them all kinds of help, told them, we are not approving your project until you extend affordability contracts on those 4 properties. And they did. Now, is it a perfect nirvana? No. But that's 35 more years of affordability guaranteed for those buildings that this board did. So that's what I'm encouraging you all to do. That's a lot more exciting than that building. The buildings are nice. I love new buildings. But 3 buildings, I think it was 1,100 units got preserved because of this committee. Right? So like that kind of stuff happens. Last thing, on the preservation bit, there has been a lot of preservation. There's a lot more preservation that has to happen. That's what David was talking about with those maps. So we had this project years ago that the Regional Plan Association did for us. And they looked at rent regulated housing out 30, 40 years, whatever it was. And they broke it down by decade. In this decade, these apartments are set to expire and so on. So via that, we approached the elected officials to get to work on preservation. We don't have a relationship with the council member in 9 in the past. Hopefully with Salam we will. So I don't know what they did over there, but we've always had a relationship with 8. And both Melissa, who are the most recent ones, and Diana have done a ton of work on preservation. That goes, you know, unreported, but that's a lot of apartments, thousands of apartments. We have incredible apartments, so there's a lot more to do. But that's super exciting for this committee to continue carrying that banner and making sure that we can continue to do that stuff. I think I know what buildings Jessica's talking about. If I'm wrong, forgive me, but there's a set of buildings in the lower part of our district that have been in disrepair, that have been empty for decades. Decades, and nothing has happened. What this committee can do about it, I don't know, use your imagination. But it is an incredible amount of buildings,
Yeah.
right? That are just hollow, right? Right, so that's where, Candy grew up here, right? So Candy probably paid those buildings.
Yeah.
Right?
I looked at that, I was raised on that.
What I'm
block,
saying,
so
right?
I
So
know.
that's something that should not be,
Yeah.
right? So even if it's just a straight gut rehab and, and preservation like that, okay, that's a super bonus. Or if it's a tear down and do something else. But let's look into like what's really the matter there. What if anything can be done? What if any, buttons have to be pushed? Or a real strong action has to be, they can be dead quiet on that. Like no one's mentioned the Ross portfolio in a decade. No, and not here. Right? Right? Nobody. And that's something we can do. And that's, so yes, a new shiny building is exciting. I agree. This stuff is exciting too. So when a former tall prop or a tall prop resident comes, has a big old smile on their face, as opposed to the sour look that they had when I first met them, that's very rewarding. So I think we should really be focusing on that kind of stuff and leave the development stuff to Jason Baylor. Yes, ma'am.
There's, I got approved by someone from the mayor's office, the accelerator program. There's so much focus on getting old buildings to function again in a better way. Healthier buildings so that when you live somewhere you can, repeat it all. And as a building owner, they don't know how to do it because it's not easy.
There's a lot of red tape for them too, they
Right.
do. I mean, just.
So for us to encourage them to take advantage of these pipelines of, subsidy dollars to do this good work so that we can, and to say, what is the program requirement to make sure that when you renovate these places that they can go to serve residents here? Is there a way to
HPD
that?
still has that like that, because if you do, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if, let's say a dean owns a building, right? Because we were in the preservation program with HPD, and it was really working with the landlords to help them get out of the violations that they have, but also to get them to get a loan or, to repair their buildings and their apartments from the violation they got evicted. But guess what happens? The red tape that they get just to get even $100,000 or $50,000 or $25,000 to fix that unit, it's like you gotta bring like 5 years worth of taxes, all this kind of stuff, but this is not so a lot of landlords are like, I don't wanna deal with this, so this is why I don't wanna deal with all the subsidy, and we don't wanna deal with none of that. Because it's too much also on them. And then HPD can say, so we're gonna give you $25,000, but you gotta make sure that apartment stays affordable. For 30 years, that's not then.
It's not J51, stuff like that.
It's not, it's on a private owner.
Okay,
That's the way it used to be with the president.
I mean, when you get money for repairs, like one of those programs, check if you want, I mean,
No,
and then you. that
It
puts you on
depends.
the-
it depends what's the program name that HPD changes it over time, because before it was,
I understand,
the
but
neighborhood-
that's one of them.
like, yeah,
For example.
yeah.
well, I mean, it goes back to the same thing too. I mean, I'm a landlord. A lot of these things, you think tenants don't get information, landlords don't either, right?
Building
So
department takes forever.
it's multi, Angel probably said it better than I did, and I brought up the Beacon as a new development. I frankly, well, I don't wanna say I don't care, but yeah, it isn't this committee's job to really influence what they're doing there. The reason why I picked them specifically is because the developer and maybe the property manager have a lot of existing properties in this neighborhood. And from what I can see, issues. I haven't even gone through all of them. And the reason why I say start with those, and there might be times where there aren't somebody looking to put up a big building, but that doesn't mean we stop doing it, then we go target other existing buildings. But it's easier to get someone to the table when they're asking for something. So that's what I'm saying. You want to build your big shiny new building, right? Well, then you kind of got to talk to the board. You got to talk to land use. Okay, now we have you a little bit more. We can get you to the table. We're like, we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the 15 properties that you're running in the neighborhood that aren't running well. And that's that bridge I do want to connect. And when I talked to Jason earlier today, that's it. I said, I don't really want to have influence even on your decision. I just want to bring them to the table. And then the only thing I really want to send to land use is just be like, they haven't engaged us. They haven't fixed this. They haven't made a commitment to anything.
Mhm.
And then you should just take that into consideration if you want to give them a shiny new building, as opposed to now, I agree. Talk about the data, finding the biggest buildings with the most violations, setting up walkthroughs, calling them to the table, preservation and maintenance, right? The preserving houses, maintaining the ones that exist. I think I was telling Angel, right? I love these stories about these new affordable housing where they build, there's a swimming pool and there's a gym and there's that. Well, that's all great. But then you're hearing about people living in other buildings whose ceilings are falling in on them and they don't have hot water and all this. So I'm like, there's a lot of parity now, even between the certain few selected people who are like winning these lotteries and getting picked for those 20-30%. And there's a lot of money going into these common areas in those buildings and stuff. And sometimes I wonder, like, that money, even these community facilities, I'm all for the community facilities, right? But when you build these big buildings, I know even downtown, I know there was a public school that was literally built because the developers were building buildings there. They built a public school. And so when I think about sometimes like what we get back from these developers, like it's the same thing. I feel like a lot of time, I know I can go too far on the other end, but again, a lot of like this community facility space, right? And again, these aren't our asks, but they're things that we can say, but this is issues with housing. And these people are building housing, but like, what can we do to help? Like, I don't know if it's feasible, but instead of if a new developer wants to build a community facility, whatever amount of money that might be, once in a while might be like, all right, so you have, 20 other buildings, maybe you take that few million and you pour them back into your other buildings and you hold off the community facilities. But I mean, these are just things to think about, things to weigh, which goes to my last goal. And then I want to dive into something that's not on the agenda and go to budget. I'll try to move through quickly. Xavier has built, he called me that he's built these inroads with NYCHA tenant presidents and tenant leaders. And I don't feel like I haven't been on this committee, but I haven't really seen a lot of engagement back and forth. He talked to me about wanting to do walkthroughs through different NYCHA facilities. So, I mean, I know he's the chair of the board, but I'm gonna hold him to that promise that he made, and I'm gonna try to at least set up one walkthrough a month. I'll give everybody a heads up at least a week in advance if you want to join. I'm not gonna be that type of person who says, oh yeah, like tomorrow, the way we find out things last minute and no one can make it. We'll try to find times that work for everybody, even if it's on a weekend or it's whatever. I'm not gonna do it like 2 o'clock on a Monday, when everybody's got things to do. And then, so I want to build inroads. I'd like to have those tenant leaders at the table. I don't even know. To open up to us, to build trust, right? He has good relationships with them. That's great. I'd like to foster those relationships into us having good relationships with them. On top of that, not just NYCHA properties, walkthroughs. one of my goals was to start identifying the biggest problem landlords, right? But bigger buildings, we can go to smaller, but like, I'm not really gonna wanna focus on an 8-unit building, I wanna focus on a 300-unit building, but the most impact right away. And try to schedule walkthroughs through those, like Angel said, not just when somebody's coming to build a new development, which is out of our purview, but ones that are existing, that have issues. And figure out what we can do. And, not like, oh my God, what are you doing? But like, get them to the table, like I said earlier, and talk through them with that. So that's a goal. I don't want to get too ambitious and not follow up, but I'd like to do at least like one a month, and then maybe once we get the rhythm down, go with more, like, see how it goes. I'd like to successfully do a walkthrough and then get them to the table. I just don't want to do a walkthrough and be like, oh, this is really bad, and then, okay, this was bad, and then just next. So, all right, Beverly, then Jessica, then Candy, quickly, and then, because we gotta go to something else, all right?
My thing is that you just don't do just the, private owners, you have to do the city. You have to do HPD.
Yeah.
HPD has a lot of buildings in this community, and they're not in good repairs.
Yeah.
So we have to do the walkthrough to, and any problems that tenants that's living in these type of buildings, if it's not HPD or whatever, that they also, that we deal with them also the same way we do with private.
I agree. Jessica?
Just want to acknowledge that there's, to build trust as quickly as possible to get to the point where we can be a resource for, the leadership at which mentioned about. That's the ideal goal, right? I think it takes building on that trust that Xavier has built. And I've heard about that as well. And I think it's so important to make sure that we're not just asking for time because we're curious and want to know, but because we want to be a resource.
Yes.
Really tapping into understanding how we can help, what needs to happen there if we're in a position to do that. I don't know that we are, but that would be the ideal outcome.
Yes. Yeah, I think getting them to the table, I mean, we have an idea, of issues they face, but like the first conversation might be, well, what are the issues? Then we say, okay, these are resources we know of, this is what we can try to figure out. And yeah, but ideally, it's not just diagnosing things, it's trying to diagnose and then help give treatment. I mean, I'm just using that,
But
like,
also,
yeah,
in a couple cases, I'm aware of some really positive things that have happened in a couple of locations that we should want to know about and amplify.
right, so success stories that can be replicated in other places, right? Exactly, I like that too. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, we can use the one that's made, we just have to go back and figure that out. So I like that too, that's a great idea. So wait, we don't have to always walk through problem situations, we can walk through
Right.
success stories too, I like that. All right, Candy, then David. Then, all right, I mean, if you're all okay with, just when we get to budget, don't all run out on me, all right? That's all I'm trying to say, so. All right, so look, we're gonna go, who did I say now? Candy, David, Cynthia, and then we're gonna go, because it's not on the agenda, but we have that 421A. We kind of were talking about it in June. I thought they might be in the audience tonight. They're not. But I'd like to just have a 5-10 minute discussion on that. So when they do show up, we kind of have something, and then we'll do budget. I think we can get to it quickly. I kind of ranked everything from last time, and maybe we can just hopefully kind of go quick. All right, Candy.
So based on what you're saying, I just want to say that maybe we can find out when every housing development is having their resident association meeting and introduce ourselves to them, because we have different leadership and different development sites. And the truth is that a lot of people don't know the history of the community boards, right? But to me, I was also a city girl, country girl. So they used to always upstate, in Ithaca, we always used to go to the town hall meetings, right? That's really the community boards. And that's where everybody will come in and discuss the issues that were going on within their own little towns and all that stuff. We need to let them know that that's what we are. We're many city boards to say, but they don't understand that. So if we just let them know we're here, and like you said, whatever we can replicate, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Nitro. If you go into the portal, you will see that there's a lot of successful, like, I think, this is my own opinion, I haven't met her yet, but the new chair that they have now with Nitro,
I think that she's really, if she's been a NYCHA resident before, then she understands then the type of services that are being given. It's giving us the respect, you know, and really looking to uplift everybody that is a tenant, whether it's home ownership that they wanna get into, whether it's, being self-sufficiency in entrepreneurship, all that kind of stuff, all that information is all in the portal, makes it easier. But we also need to just engage and then see what are the issues going on, but how we can work together cohesively with the residents, and if you wanna do it like that.
I think that's a great
up to
idea
you,
too.
you know?
Yeah, no, I think,
That would be easier to know than guessing and doing the pop-up.
no, I agree. Yeah, I like that, you know, what I'm gonna do is, you know, again, if he came to me with it, Xavier, so I am gonna, bring him all our ideas. Listen, you think you have a good idea when you, and this is the point of this, right? You build on ideas and you get to a better idea. So I came with a little idea and it's already gotten to a much better idea, so thank all you, so, all right. David, Cynthia, well, John, you really haven't, I'm gonna go to John, then David, then Cynthia, then Loretta, and then I'm cutting it, all right, for now, all
Okay,
right?
to follow up on what Candy said. Now, if Xavier doesn't have this information, the thing is that many, TA president are prepared to say 5 years.
Mhm.
So the thing is, so if I've gone there for the last 15 years, so I know most of them, so I can find out where their meetings are. Now, the only thing about it is the same night as the full board meeting. So that it starts to,
Yep.
I'll probably be late if I go there and get the information.
That's okay.
Excused, yeah.
It won't be excused, it'll be a late absence, and we'll cross it out and make it a president.
You can be excused on
Well,
board.
you can be excused, but then
On board.
does that excuse still count?
But it's.
Oh, it's fine.
Oh.
No, that's
It's
fine.
on
Yeah.
I've always gotten confused with the excuse, but that's a different kind of excuse,
You guys
okay?
stop listening when we explain.
No, you did. It rang a bell. You rang an old bell in my head.
I know it.
Depending on what, if the needs are Silverman, the PSA meeting is on 1/23 and 30, so I can just walk over when that's.
I may miss it and go with you, that's, all right, David.
So in following up also with that, I thought we should maybe, develop little mini task force within us. In action, and a few people work on that and attend those meetings. And then maybe after attending their meetings, we then bring them together, maybe on a Zoom itself. This is just a forum around NYCHA facilities or Franklin, those other kinds of large housing units, like you say. So it's like twofold, get out there, meet them. We want to hear from you, and then, we've heard from you, and these are some of the common things. How do we strengthen, NYCHA as a community? We have the largest amount of NYCHA facilities in the city,
Yeah.
right in this little community, right? So how do we use that as power?
Yeah. No, I like that, and we have a big, as Angel said, we have the biggest committee, so if we can get everybody engaged and showing up, 15 is a lot, you could make some task forces, that's something we could think about. What I'll do, if we do, is I'll ask everybody where they wants to be, if one is, a little, more interesting, we'll have to. And we could even rotate, once we, I don't wanna rotate too often, because, you need continuity on things you're working on. But I don't want people to feel like they can't be a part of certain things, so we can always figure that out, but I like that idea too. Cynthia and Loretta.
So in terms of tenants that you mentioned, when you are considering going through walkthroughs, do you talk to property managers about re-rentals, and how do you know? Once initial lease up happens that and somebody moves out, that they're exactly moving the same type of person that are set aside into stability, is that something that the board does or no?
I mean,
How do you
that-
guarantee that happens? There's no way.
So to say that we're doing it, it's not, it's something that we, I think, could do. But I think first you have to build a relationship with those folks, so we can have that conversation and ask this question.
The other thing was, there are other meetings, there's a 23rd precinct council meeting, which I attend, it's the last Wednesday of every month. And the 23rd precinct also has council meetings there. So there are other meetings as well, that's different.
I'm gonna ask everybody, I'll show up to some, so whoever's going to these meetings, send me the meetings, send me the date, like if I'm welcome, if you want me to come with you, I'm happy to come as much as I can to start to, listen, when I asked to do this, I didn't ask because I know everything, I just feel like I could help with John get us moving, just in the right direction, so I by no means think I'm an expert, I have a lot to learn. It's a little overwhelming hearing all of this, but I'm also very happy hearing all of it. It's just now about sitting down and figuring out, you know, where do we start? Because there's a problem, we're gonna have to whittle this down and then start just chopping and getting systems. Once we have systems in place, we can kind of move through these things quicker, right? I'm gonna, you know, I don't know, he's a busy man. I'm sometimes a busy man, but I'm gonna try to have regular meetings with him. I'm happy to walk here and start just like ironing this out. I'm not gonna do like, oh, we got the agenda, like I wanna really, you know, get this down and like, you know, yeah.
So you know, it's like, how do you prioritize, right? It's.
I may, we might, this is an idea, I'm not making any promises. We might meet, say, a week from today, right, or 3 days, this week again, right, and me and Angel might sit there and say, these are 3 or 4 things we took from the meeting that we think we can go to. I may send out an email to everybody and say, because I think all 4 are important, let's start prioritizing as a committee, so we're energized by the work we're doing.
We look at just matching them up with our budget priorities, right?
Well, we're gonna do that.
You know, I'm saying, like, the things we're talking about, right? Are they in line with our budget priorities?
Well, we're gonna get to that, and then, so we're gonna go to Loretta, then we're gonna talk about the 421A, we have like a resolution, I wanna see who's read it, who has thoughts, just to get some ideas there. We're not gonna take any positions or anything, but just to talk about, so Loretta?
Okay, first of all, I'm glad to hear the interaction that the housing committee is gonna have with NYCHA. As I said earlier, I'm a resident of NYCHA, Jackie Robinson, and I'm also on the Tenant Association board. So to hear the comments and things that are being said is something that I could take back to my board and let them know that, yeah, there's an interaction happening down at the community board level for housing. Because a lot of issues we have dealt with on our own go into other places to help get them resolved. And in fact, now that I know that we could come here and get that assistance.
So then, I want them, like, if you can do that and create that, just that relationship, and then that's exact, because I don't want you to just go back and say, oh, everything they were saying is great, and then that's it. I want you to say that to them, and then they come here and they see that we're gonna listen, we're gonna think a solution, and right, we don't have to think of new solutions, we can go, oh, that worked there, maybe that matches the problem, maybe we can figure that out, okay? So I thank you so much, all right, so. My first housing meeting, you know, I think I was on this committee a long time ago, I don't remember, but was June, and I know we had a lot of, I think they were from Judith's building on Madison Avenue. Their tax abatement, I believe, is expiring, I'm not gonna say that's the only one, but that was like the one that I saw firsthand here that night, and I know that we've had like a draft resolution on the table for, who's, just a show of hands, who's familiar with that resolution? Maybe some of you don't even, well,
It's changed a couple of times, right? It's been revised a couple of
Yeah,
I
times.
got a working document.
So I don't know what was the last person, you know.
The last one was the one I sent you.
Yeah,
That was the last one. I don't know, I didn't share that with everyone because I was still in draft status.
Okay.
So if you shared it, then maybe.
I'll circulate it for everybody. I'll send it either today or tomorrow when I get home.
So if I could just,
Yeah, go ahead.
so at the last meeting, we talked about like some of the ideas we wanted, like the education, you know, the financial literacy piece of it. The potential of perhaps creating a program that freezes what the tax rates are to when it was purchased. In order to kind of ease people, limiting it to people who are aged 57 and a half and older, I believe that is where we left it at. So I added all those things in to the frame that existed before without omitting anything other than the things that were no longer relevant because they were superseded by the new legislation that actually did pass in last year's budget. So that's kind of where it came together. I shared it in draft just to kind of get a sense with John and them. But I am, like I told you, and I told you, I have no ego with this, so, you know, tear it apart, whatever you feel is useful, great, whatever isn't, also great. It's just a way for us to kind of compile everything we talked about over those last 2 meetings into one document.
All right, so since, I'll get to you, so since like, we're not all too familiar with the document, I think we're all familiar with that maybe specific situation. What I think, we won't spend too much time, I will send everybody that draft, and listen, you guys can all, like I said, I really mean it, text me, call me, we can talk about it in the meantime, we don't have to wait till next month to just start giving ideas. I read it, and I went on a little bit of an educational thing with 421A deeper, I watched there were some old meetings we had where people presented, ideas about 421A, what they thought about 421A, the benefits, the trade-offs of it. There is a component, I believe, with we talked about senior housing, right? There's a need for new senior housing, and we talked about preservation, right? There's a need to preserve senior housing. There are examples of people, and I'll just say Judith, and I'm saying it because she's come here and explained it, so I don't wanna air someone's situation, but she's made it public. Judith's a perfect example, right? And there are many more like her, but I just pick her because I personally care about Judith, but it shouldn't have to be where you just personally care about somebody, right? So like, I firmly believe, I know there are programs already out there, it's like SCHE, SCHE. Yeah, right, so SCHE, right, so that, I looked at it. For certain income bands, it helps a lot, for other ones, I would think from going to paying no taxes to that program, it is still a pretty big jump. So there were some of my ideas in the resolution were to like highlight the programs that exist and then say, maybe, because I know in that, and I like that, there was a disproportionate property tax increase in this community as opposed to others. And, right, yeah, so, the thing is, like, that program is the same for everybody, no matter where you are, right? It's based on your age and your income and your primary residence. Weirdly, I think it covers like up to 3 apartments, right? So like, that's one issue I already see with that program, right? Some people aren't getting the full help they need, and then other people can use this over 3 properties. And then my thing is like, if you have 3 properties to apply it to, how are you qualified for this program, right? That makes no sense, right? So I think like the resolution, I really want to focus on the seniors. I want to focus on the seniors who really need it. And then I don't want to tell someone like Judith or people like Judith, oh, well, there's already a program, here you go. Because that's not the way it works, right? So here's a program, here's something we're gonna do to ask to even deepen that program more. Because anything we're gonna do is just an ask, right?
Yeah.
But I think if we have like a specific thing that we can point, just like, you're doing this, but you could do better, right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing 3? And why are you doing it the same downtown? I mean, again, it baffles me, the 3 thing, I just can't get over how that makes any sense, but, I'm gonna leave it at that. That just, I thought it was I think I told you at first I like it, but then that's just my idea. Jessica?
I'm just trying to clarify, you are essentially calling out a gap that is not covered by the policy that is much needed. As far as the support that the policy provides, is that the general?
You mean with this,
intention of the?
well, I think that, I don't wanna say that because I didn't write it. I think that's just, it was asking to give these people help, right? And I just wanna like get that more narrowly focused to like, these are programs that are already helping that population.
But they need help because there's a gap in policy.
With
No, that expired.
right, expired, but here's my
So
thing.
it leaves them up in the air because now.
Well, 421A expires, right? But the question is, it expired for everybody living in there, right? But now the question becomes, do we wanna really extend it for everybody?
No, we
Right,
are gonna ask for in our neighborhood.
right, no, even in our neighborhood, not everybody's situation is the same, right?
Right, not
I'm
one
pretty
size
sure
fits
there are
all.
people, and look, I wanna be delicate about how I say these things. We wanna help everybody, but I really want to, they always say, oh, it trickles down. Well, I wanna work it from the bottom up. If you're making $150,000 a year living in that building and now you have to pay property taxes.
Yeah.
Look, sorry, I just want to, go ahead.
I was gonna, I'm trying to help you clarify it in
Yeah.
a way where we don't both get in trouble.
Yeah. I don't mind.
The biggest issue is for the people who were told that they can age in place.
That's-
What they weren't told in 2008, well, not even that, what they weren't told in 2008 when the bottom dropped on mortgage rates was that when you refinance, it resets your mortgage to day one.
That's right.
And unfortunately,
And if it's a balloon, mortgage, then they have a problem.
well, even more than that, the life of the loan is gonna outlive the life of the abatement. And they were not told that. Now, the financial institutions will say, yes, we told them, because they'll lie, but the reality is we know.
No, but the thing is, how many classes, because back then, the
Yeah.
HPD was giving educational sessions, one session. You can't absorb all of that in one session, you really can't,
No, I
because
know.
we're even doing that with the other housing, home ownership that were down on Madison Avenue, the same thing. And even in 119th Street and First and Pleasant Avenue. One day session is not enough for anybody to absorb all that, and then the regulatory agreement, it's not like everybody understands the language, and then if it's not in layman language, you're not gonna know, so here we are today. And this is a problem.
So that's why the offer to help is like you age into it. And I'm sorry, Stephanie.
I'm just trying to understand, they were never told that the life of the abatement would exceed the mortgage?
When they
They
refinanced.
Yeah.
So if they
So
refinance
if they
like
chose not
5
to
years.
refinance,
They're fine,
but those who chose, which most people did.
because the rates dropped and there was money available and it was cheap.
Right.
Yes, that's where a lot of people fall into that issue. Yeah.
So I see it like twofold, right? I see it like, one, there's kind of like where you could ask for, like this 421A to kind of continue for those people. There's also been the idea of, right, rolling back to what they would have paid in property taxes like 30 years ago.
When they purchased,
Right.
if it makes sense.
Right, or like, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think we don't know what we're gonna get, so we just kind of, then we have those programs which specifically would help this population. And then we can even ask to deepen those. So it's just a problem. The main thing I think is the displacement of seniors
Mhm.
and their housing, and this is gonna definitely cause some of that if there isn't, like a life raft thrown out there, not even a life raft, something more permanent than life raft, but go ahead.
But can we, then? All right, so based on a past experience of something that I went through, and I just needed 11, just only 11 vouchers. And the state was like, well, no, right? And I'm saying, I'm only saying 11, I'm not asking for 100 or anything like that, but I know you can find 11,
Yeah.
to save these individuals from being evicted and preserve those apartments as that's it, it's a subsidy base, right? Yeah, you do a little tap dance, but at the end of the day, it got accomplished. And I don't see why it cannot be done is how we do the ask. Okay, and that's all I'm saying, whether it's from the city or the state, somebody has to be held accountable, because no one, we're aging in place, this is an experience. And the truth is, these are funds that are being allocated, disallocated, we're being is investments, then we get disinvested in our community. So this is one way of asking, okay, these are our seniors, these are how many people through data that are gonna be displaced or in jeopardy of being displaced, and they're gonna be aging in place. This is what we like to see. We know, we know that there's money there, we're not asking for the whole thing, but you could give us something to help subsidize and help,
That's what
with.
the resolution is, right?
Right, so what-
So if we can do something to that nature of that language.
So in the last,
I'll get the idea
really
now,
quick,
but
so in the
I'll
last
forget
two
it,
meetings, we've been talking about this resolution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this resolution go, actually.
It
goes
in
back
other-
further.
in our housing committee,
It's up there.
More than that.
Okay, so look, we have one, right?
Yeah.
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna circulate it to everybody. All right, you can either, I think it's just better if you make your notes, then we all start, or you can edit.
Add
your-
comments, yeah,
add
so
comment,
I
add
set it up
comments.
so you can add comments and.
If you don't mind sharing it, cause it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
'cause I
fine.
don't know if I have the permissions to share, so add your comments. And then I think in the next meeting, we flesh it out, and then maybe if we flesh it out quick enough, but I don't know, cause we got a lot now, right? We've thrown so much, but I know that there's a group, they're coming. I want to, I mean, listen, it's like everything else, right? I tell people, you go quietly, don't make any noise, nobody's really gonna help you. So they're making some noise, like, let's figure it out.
Who's the
It's
group?
up, what?
Who's the group that's coming?
Well, right now, the groups, they're coming with Judith. I think they're all from that building on, yeah, right? But I'm not saying that it's just, like, they're kind of a voice for, more people than just them, right? So this isn't like for that building. It's just, there's an active group that's concerned with that. I don't know if my beliefs align completely with what they want. I think they may want more than I think what I'm thinking is actually important. Maybe that's all up to you to decide,
Just
right?
gotta make it real to show them, okay, this is where, because the state has money.
We have to make it legit, we have to make it legitimate, like, sometimes you ask for, but then sometimes you just have to ask for what you really want and what you really need. And I think this is one of those examples. So I don't want to spend more time because I want everybody to read this. And then Angel, and then we're gonna go to budget, all right?
Include the data in that information. That we know about how many people and what kind of programs it is, so, like she said.
Yeah, we have to research that piece of it to see.
I can share the
impact.
link to you to
Yeah.
at least the
Okay.
current program that
Okay.
is offering that to seniors already for their primary residences. Angel?
Yeah, thanks. Well, if you could put that draft document into the shared board member drive.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
And then we could set it to just comments, so it'll
Okay.
mess it up.
Mm-hmm. You threw that into a quick.
Well,
You heard
the
it?
man's working hard on it. Does that make it easier?
So it'll be on the shared drive.
Yeah.
The other thing, because I haven't read what's been edited, but I did read the original one. And the original one, just to be clear, did not say anything about seniors. It said very specifically extend the 421A program, which in my opinion would be an absolute mistake. However, there are, I believe I've heard several legitimate concerns overall, like this last 2 years, as I've been talking about this. In terms of like impacts on people living on fixed incomes and all that kind of jazz. So I think there's certainly something responsible to be done there. But the language as it originally existed was to just extend 421A in perpetuity. That's a terrible idea.
I want to piggyback on that. There's a meeting from 2022. I think some of you may have been on here. I wasn't. It was Community Service Society, something they presented something on 421A in general, right? Not for seniors, for what it takes out of the budget and all this and what, and then, how, as a whole, it doesn't really create affordable housing. I mean, this is one side, but there was a lot of statistics to back that up. So I'm gonna share that all with you too. It was a long meeting, so I'll find the timestamps on just when that was presented, and watch it. You gotta kind of scroll through. It's another one of those PowerPoints, so I just kind of read the PowerPoints and I was like, oh, wow, and it opens your eyes, and don't come out like hating it, right? Because remember, we're still gonna try to maybe utilize it for certain people, but I think that's the disparity that Angel's talking about, or like, we don't really want to continue this for everybody, but we want to see who we can help. The seniors being displaced by this program expiring in conjunction with people that refinanced that were, or even if they didn't. I'm not gonna go around and be like, are you a senior that refinanced, but just seniors in general, all right, so.
People in
Or this is a-
fixed income.
Yeah, the one.
It could be income, right? We can figure that out. I like that too, right? It could be seniors, it could be certain incomes, it could be disabilities. The specifics of it, who we wanna help, we'll identify those groups, right? Cause you're right, it isn't just seniors. I mean, so I like that income, disabilities, we can think about other ones. All right, so we'll go into budget. I'm happy to have Stephanie, because as licensed chair, like I never dealt with budgets ever. And Angel, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I went through the 2025 capital budget priorities and requests, and then expense for housing. I extrapolated just our asks, and then I prioritized that. So I guess we'll go through them quickly. So like the first one,
Can I say something
Yeah.
before you go?
Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to speak a little bit on process before we get going, and part of the interruption. So I just listed out a very simple map here on the agenda, hoping that can, help. We've changed the way that the budget committee operates now, so it's not as much weight on the other committees. So we're just focusing the committees on their budget specifically, which is what the demo is about to get into. So for tonight, it's just, for tonight, starting tonight and ending next month. Review where you landed, in terms of your budget request from last year. Look at the findings from the survey, you know, and then we'll distribute the link to the survey. DCP is collecting all the survey responses for us. And then discuss recommendations for budget requests. You do not have to land on your final request. If you do request a miracle tonight, amen, but by next month, right? No later than next month. There won't be any extensions. Because that all needs to be sent from all the different committees to the budget committees for it to be able to do its work. If you don't submit it, like happened last year, your whole committee's request will not be included. And then the last thing is, you know, prioritize, you know, next month. Your lists for capital and expense budget in order of priority, and that's the way it should be submitted to the committee. On this sheet here, that we printed out, then picked out all the budget requests that came out of this committee, what the agency's response was, you'll see that in parentheses. And then what we do internally as a staff is we add notes or recommendations, you know, whether to keep, revise, or remove. You guys can take that or leave it, but those are that's our bit of feedback. Thank you.
No, actually, I didn't even know you did that for this part. Great. It makes it easier because I feel like if something was, and I could be wrong here because new things pop up, right? But if something was highly prioritized the last time around and it wasn't funded or it didn't happen, I would assume we'd like to keep those high up again, right? So, I mean, just looking at the list Angel provided, so capital budgets and requests, I don't really want to read through the whole list, you know, but I guess, and Angel, correct me if I'm wrong. You want me to read through it?
Do you want me to read it?
No, I'll read it.
Oh.
Should I read it? No, I know, I don't want, I feel I'll read it. All right. All right,
There's 3,000 of them that's expense.
Yes.
yeah,
It's a good place to start.
yeah. Well, so basically I sent this to Angel and then he put staff recommendations, right? It seems to me like, most of them are keep. There are some that say revise, right? So like the keeps are kind of easier, right? So like number one, capital budget is to expand the home repair and preservation financing, multifamily housing rehabilitation loan program in East Harlem. There's a few more lines that, but the agency will accommodate this within its existing resources. And the staff recommendation is to keep it. So I believe that was like the number one, capital budget priority and request we had. Okay, so we can open the table up after we go through these to see if there's anything new that anyone wants to add. And you can feel free to add, you know, send those, you know, within the next month or so. We have to have this finalized at next month's meeting, right? So this time in between the two meetings will be important. The second one is provide 100% funding to the remaining till. So I know that's something we talked about, buildings located in East Harlem pertaining to the existing tenants and potential homeowners of less than 80% of AMI, including but not limited to 102 East 98th Street and 2 East 127th Street. This will ensure that these renters become shareholders under the HDFC program. So notes are keep, and then their explanation. So the committee needs to request current status of properties in Till, Pipeline, and Community District 11, and what is being done to move these properties forward to becoming HDFCs, okay? Number three, install security cameras or make other safety upgrades. So it's provided, our specific explanation was to provide funding to replace exterior lighting for housing developments not covered under the mayor's action plan. It was a simple keep by the board, by the staff. All right, so that was it for what we had from our capital budget priorities. Then expense budget priorities and requests. Number one was to provide, expand, or enhance a retail subsidy program. So it's to increase funding for subsidies that help eligible low-income families, seniors, and disabled individuals to rent decent, safe, affordable housing, Community District 11. HPD administered federal rental subsidy programs are subject to annual congressional budget appropriations. HPD does not have authority to increase the budget. So I think we're gonna keep that. Provide, expand, number two is provide, expand, or enhance programs for housing inspections to correct code violations. So it's increased funding for specialized enforcement programs such as the Alternative Enforcement Program, the Program Preservation Program, Underlying Conditions Program, and the Anti-Harassment Unit, and inspections to correct code violations. You know, a lot of these just said, the agency will try to accommodate this within existing resources, right? Okay, go ahead.
I could translate. So when OMB gives us that response, that means, yes, we're doing it. That doesn't mean no,
Okay. Oh, okay, that's better than I thought it.
but strategically, what we do is we keep asking
Yeah. Okay,
So our.
with those kinds of.
May I ask, Jason, you brought up, a tranche of activity that had its funding cut. Is it appropriate to mention, reinstating that in our requests? If it coincides with the other programs we're asking funding for?
I think it would be a new ask,
In your request.
yeah, a new request. Or the HCP
We
program.
used to ask for it and then it got funded and they took the funding away, so yes.
Now we've asked for again.
Go back to one of those old ones and just copy and
Well,
paste.
no, they got a different mayor.
and that would go under expense, right? Okay, and so I guess we'll go through the list and then we could see, just because it's new, we might wanna put it, prioritize it over something else, all right? So that's a new one. Angel will put that down. When we finish these, we'll circle back. At least we can start. And then we'll see if anybody has any other ones they want to add right now. All right, so we're at number 3. Expand code enforcement, provide more funding for the Office of the Tenant Advocates Tenant Harassment Unit. And staff recommendation is to remove,
Yeah, we added this when this was first being created, now it exists.
okay, great. So that was
I
done.
didn't hear what you said.
It's.
We added this years ago when this office was first being created and now it exists.
It
And that's
exists.
fine.
Oh, we can take 3 out. All right, that's good. 4 is, increasing funding for affordable housing preservation programs. And then the staff recommended that we keep it. And the committee needs to request updates on preservation projects in the Community District 11 in the last 5 years and what's planned for the next 5 years. Okay, number 5, provide funding for additional service vans, equipment, staffing, and language assistance to assist diversified NYCHA residents with annual recertifications, maintenance requests, service vans, and other technological needs, including establishing computer labs for resident use. And then the staff recommended that we revise this to state, provide funding for additional service vans, equipment, staffing, and language assistance to assist NYCHA residents with annual recertifications, maintenance requests, and other technological needs. Okay, number 6 is to provide funding to increase awareness regarding housing vouchers and other HPD programs such as I'm just gonna say DRE and SCRE, all right, and staff recommendation, revise, provide funding to increase awareness of HPD programs and services, particularly DRE and SCRE, okay? 7, provide funding for additional vouchers for seniors, returning veterans, and their families, and staff recommends that we keep it, okay? So it looks like besides, one of the, let me go back. Number 3 on expense, we're crossing out, and then we have a new one, that we want to add in, right? And that's also under expense, right? So.
What was it called?
AHTP,
There was a term.
anti-harassment tenant protection.
Yeah, it's freezing in here.
Yeah, we did that when Jeremiah was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, on number 6, sorry, on number 6, on the SCRE and DRE. This might be a good place for us to perhaps talk about either increasing funding or increasing funding to create awareness around the ski program, because that's kind of, SCRE is for rental, ski is for home ownership.
I like that.
Yeah,
They
so.
also have ones for the homeowners.
Yeah.
Ski,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the program he was saying that might be good for folks who are impacted by 421A.
Yeah.
So this might be a good place for us to
Specifically stated.
state it, yeah.
I like that.
Should
You
it
said
be in
screen as well. And there's a program also that reduces their, gives them an exempt on their taxes.
Yeah, Yeah.
The new one is increasing the
That
age.
you have to be of a certain
Because if,
age.
you know, they're not able to be
Yeah.
things that are not the same, then.
Separate it?
Separate it and make its own.
If those programs are managed by HPD, then it will fall into something else.
That,
I
okay.
think we can squeeze it in there.
But
If
some-
it isn't, then we should,
There's the
It's
Department of Finance.
Finance, it's the Department of Finance that
finance and HPD.
manages both screen.
Screen tree, yeah.
But we don't know about.
Ski, yeah.
Yeah, cause I was doing my notes with.
You don't hear about ski
Okay,
often.
no,
It's for
okay.
homeowners.
Actually, I'm thinking of the rap.
Yeah.
I know when I started saying,
Yeah.
What they pay. I call that the mini section 8 for seniors.
all right, so if they fall under it, I
Yeah.
think it's okay. If they don't, we'll
Yeah.
split them up. All right, thank you for
And
that.
the definitions. So then I go to them.
All right, so the anti-harassment, right? For tenants,
HTP.
yeah. Where are people feeling like that would fit in, so into this list? So I mean, taking in mind that 3 is out, so everything that's existing would be bumped up a spot. So, 7 would be 6 now, and 6 would be 5, 1 and 2 would stay as they are. Do we feel that that is more of a priority than some of these that have already been on there and haven't been addressed, or?
But
Yeah.
that's needed because,
Needed, yes, but right, how prioritized is
well,
it?
it is a priority because
You
also.
wanna- that seems like a,
But you still got some landlords, especially the ones that are being very scrupulous that are attacking people in the nighttime, letting them know, they gotta move out. Or trying to buy them out or tell them that they gotta move because the building is being sold
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's a constant harassment. And so it's like a lot of people would then get up and leave because they don't know their rights. And then some of them, when they do come out, they gotta pay.
Alright, so we, okay with 3?
Sorry, I
Go ahead.
recommend, making our expense request number 4 on our sheet, number 3, and slotting in, the TP reinstate. funds
Number
as
4.
number
Okay, so
So
4
we'll-
bump,
wait,
so 4,
wait.
alright, so as the document exists, 3 is out. Okay,
Okay.
that program is back in, it doesn't need to be asked for. So then what Jessica's saying is now what exists currently as 4, which is to increase funding, and I like that, for affordable housing preservation programs. We now bump that to 3. And then we put the new thing into 4, the anti-harassment tenant program. I think I
So
got
it's
it.
no, 5 will be 4?
No. So 4
5 stays
becomes,
5.
3 is out,
Uh-huh.
4 becomes 3, and the anti-harassment tenant program becomes 4. So then 5, 6, and 7 stay as they are.
Oh, okay.
It's that.
Angel,
So if the ski one is separate, so we add it under the current 6?
I think we put, if it's the same, we just put it into 6. I think if it's not, we move that we make that 7, and then it's ski is 7, and then we move 7 to 8.
Okay.
I think that, because I don't wanna put ski over what we've already been asking for, not getting. I'm not
Right.
really,
Number 5 stays 5.
right. So right now, 5, 6,
Wait,
and
so we're saying
ski might go into 6.
It might go into 6.
Or it might become 7.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so 5 stays with
All right.
5 with the acronyms that y'all.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
ski,
alright.
what's that for ski?
This is the program we were talking about in regards to the 421A expiring.
And it's SKI.
SCHE, I believe.
Yeah.
SBHE. And this is for homeowners.
Ski.
Okay, this is for home.
So that's, and then, the anti-harassment tenant program, AHTP.
HTTP.
Right, so that's gonna be number 4 now, the anti-harassment tenant program. That's
Okay.
number 4. What was number 4 is going to number 3. That isn't an acronym, that's just increasing funding for affordable housing preservation programs. That's moving to 3 because we are taking 3 out.
Right,
Because that's, I guess, been addressed, okay? So 3
okay.
is out, 4 becomes 3, and then anti-harassment tenant program goes into 4, and then ski would go into 6 if it falls under the same purview that it's in HPD and Department of Finance as DRE and SCRE do, which are for renters. Ski is for homeowners. If
Okay.
it doesn't fall in, I think what we're saying is
We
that
might
ski
separate.
becomes 7, and so it's 6, and then ski is 7, and then what's currently 7 which is the affordable housing vouchers for seniors would become A. Jessica.
I'd like to, thank you for making this so efficient and effective.
Yes.
We're doing it. Regarding the capital request, I'd like to suggest that we bump number 2 to number 1 and just make it like the I didn't see first.
So flipping them, 2 and 1. Is everybody, how does everybody feel about that? I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with
Yeah,
that, and I
yeah.
can give you some listings of the
It's HPD
properties
and.
that's on HPD. Community Board 11,
You mean to specifically list them out in there?
yeah,
Okay.
I think I have a list of all, even the ones that's been successful. That's still viable and working,
Okay.
so if we have that type of information, we can say it's been a working program.
Oh, yeah, I don't think, no,
Well, we don't wanna
Well,
make,
as data.
we don't wanna make, but I hear you, I mean, maybe I could be wrong. I don't want them to think they funded this enough already. I want them to
Yeah.
think it's a real problem. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you've given a lot of money, it's working great. They're like, oh, well, then that's not a priority. Tell them, oh, look, I like your idea about listing a bunch that haven't been working. I think we had 2 in here already. If you wanna add more that haven't gotten there, I
Okay.
like that.
I
But
can
no
do that.
success stories in this
Okay,
case.
no,
They don't,
yeah.
we don't need to bring that to their attention.
And Beverly,
That's why I don't flag it either.
and Beverly, to your previous question, it's SKI stands for Senior Citizen Homeowners Exemption.
Right.
Thank you.
That's the thing.
Exemption.
Angel?
So I have a summary document in the housing committee's folder on the board member drive on the different exceptions and the program, both the senior and the.
You've been writing all this down with our changes?
Yeah.
Oh, great, cause I'm trying.
He's like the Matrix, he
Yeah.
sees code.
He-
He just sees the code.
I know, but I'm not even.
Well, no,
I'm trying to-
I'm doing the same, I'm like arrows up, arrows down.
2026, right? I looked at it, it seemed like based on the surveys we took, that the 2 housing issues that were the biggest were, I know one was homelessness, which I figured tied into us. It is us, right? I know it's our thing. And then I wrote all these, I have so many different notes, I can't even figure, oh, this survey. Okay, and then the other one was, nope, that's not it. Yep. Affordable housing, right? So affordable housing and homelessness. I'm now losing it. Do we have anything specific for homelessness on this?
Any
already?
budget requests on homelessness?
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
Does that fall into, I know this is where the division between land use and housing gets a little blurry. In asking for more funding to support housing for
and new
LA.
development.
That falls under.
Yeah, the big bucket asks for all that different kinds of housing, especially.
They support it.
Okay, so I
It's the
like,
top 2.
I like that you brought that up, since 3 of us are on land use, and we know that it's 4, sorry, Candy. That we know that even though it doesn't, because I wanna make sure we stay on the line of what we're supposed to be doing, but they tie together, so we should make sure that that's high up when we go to land use.
So
It's always 1 and 2.
if that falls under land use, then would preserving. Like,
Existing.
well, yeah, preserving this assistance in order to make sure that people don't become homeless, that would fall under.
That
us.
would, yeah.
Right.
So that would be, funding more one-shot through HRA, that would be, yeah, and also, I would think affordability, like making sure affordability levels stay the same for the people that are most likely to become homeless. I'm sure everyone knows the largest driver of homelessness in New York City is actually domestic violence.
And there's very little homes for them.
Yeah, I work, full disclosure, I work for a DV provider, we do, we're the largest shelter provider. More shelters are not the solution, we need housing, yeah, cause it only gets you so far.
Right.
But perhaps there can be some sort of discussion about what we can do in order, and this might be social services, in order to increase housing assistance for DV survivors,
Right.
which, by the way, we're also in one of the top 10 DV districts
Yeah.
in the city.
Is that so capital, the difference between capital and expense, right? $30,000 is their cap for expense, 3 million.
That 35,000 something.
Right, so that would be a
I think that would be capital,
capital
it would have to
ask,
be a
yeah.
capital ask. I just don't know.
No, it's, so, a capital ask would have to be that amount, and it has to be like a physical.
If it's a service.
But if it's a program, then it's expensive.
Yeah.
But is it-
It could be $1 million.
Is that human services? Or is it?
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
is,
What was the term you used? Housing.
in terms of what?
Just a second ago when you were explaining it. I was trying to catch what you were saying, so I could fast.
So we're talking about one shelter, we want DV housing assistance,
Yeah.
like,
Housing.
yeah, housing assistance for DV survivors, and that could be. Supportive housing now includes DV survivors as one of the categories, so when you hear supportive housing, don't just think it's mental health. Yeah. And, you know, we've been using that, yeah, we've been using that in order to create new housing opportunities, through Ishai. Cause now we can actually use it just for DV survivors. I know that's Novel did this, part of their portfolio is now for DV. There might be something there, I kinda need some fine tuning.
Think on it, well.
I know.
Why don't you, if you want,
Yeah.
if you wanna
I'm in
craft,
the office tomorrow.
if you wanna craft like, cause you've said a few things, and I don't know if it would all fit under one ask. But I think that since homelessness is one or two at least, and we've maybe only looked at homelessness from the angle of a land use perspective as a board, that maybe there's two asks we could put in about. It is.
It's preserving people in there.
Right, so they're worried about, you know, providing new housing for, I guess, existing homeless people. And we're saying, we're trying to find those people who are at most risk of becoming homeless that have housing.
Like that.
That's where you have the eviction prevention.
Right, homeless prevention.
That's
Homeless prevention, yeah.
But naming it the way.
But some people aren't even evicted. and they become
There is a
homeless,
program
like,
based.
There's a program home-based, but, Department of,
So we.
Homeless Services.
What he's doing is like asking them for more funding for them. or something like that.
Yeah,
Well, more of their thing is prevention, again.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what we're on. You're 100% right.
every one of my.
It makes
But then
sense
that's also
because they have to be-
service,
Yeah.
right? So
We
that's
could be,
where
we
that-
could be right next door to you, you would
It's
not.
almost like some of these issues always
I had someone
involve
say, oh,
overlapping of.
We don't know you guys, we've been there for 40 years, we can't tell you where, but we've been there.
I hear you. Well, what,
Sorry.
Well, it might be interesting to see if that's on the agenda on the human service.
Sorry.
see, that's the problem with this, is knowing, like, we've had this issue, right? What's land use, what's housing, now what's human
Yes.
services,
Right.
and what's housing.
Because housing touches everything.
But housing does touch everything, right?
Right,
Housing
yeah.
touches transportation, it
I
touches.
think I may have narrowed it down.
Okay,
now,
good.
in thinking about it. I think it's, cause right now the DV, supportive housing piece is limited.
Okay.
And it's a pilot program. So maybe it's expanding, you know, calling for an expansion of that program. Because again, it is
Yeah.
the single biggest
And provide
driver.
more. There's not enough
success.
sufficient.
So far, they've been able to create more units in the last year since it's been in there. And I'm talking about like, from my agency standpoint, we've been able to create about 300 new units across the city that didn't
But that's-
exist.
That's capital.
But that's,
Yeah.
temporary, right?
No,
that's not permanent?
This is
Permanent
permanent
home?
supportive housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within existing properties, so that's
With-
how.
Yeah, so basically what happened is the supportive housing existed, it was only for mental health
And they
or
offered-
and then what it is, they
Right.
opened it
Pared down.
and we were able to place 300 people who normally wouldn't have qualified to that, so it created 300 new opportunities for that
Well, that
housing.
sounds successful.
So who is that
It
target
is.
population in that filling those on the slot, right? Because if you say I'm taking away this
Well-
population or that target.
The biggest issue is that a lot of supportive housing has been sitting empty.
Oh,
Mm.
so they're filling empty
Because
units.
no one meets those other requirements, but this
But
is
that's
a larger
still,
need.
you still have a mental.
Yeah,
Component to it,
You know,
yeah.
because
That
it
makes
does
sense.
have, it deals with you on an emotional state.
Yeah.
100%.
Family and
So
all
the
that,
funding, does
so-
that come funding, I'm gonna learn it, right? So does a lot of that funding come straight through housing it?
Yeah, no,
it's.
Human services and P, I mean, it's gotta be a combination.
There's so many different
No,
pots
yeah.
so some of it is state money, some of it is city money,
Right.
some of it is private
They all-
foundation money, yeah, the money like gets pooled together. And it gets administered by whatever agency is the lead agency on this.
So whatever
Yeah.
one of the- they don't-
whoever's funding that development
Yeah.
right there.
So it would be asking for more funding. for
I guess my
access to
question,
these.
which agencies?
Yeah, so it would, well, it's administered by HRA
Gotcha, so it could-
with HPD, HPD,
HCR.
well, that's state level HCR. But HRA is the main administrator.
So
Oh, yeah, housing
HPD and
units.
HCR is in our jurisdiction,
Yeah.
and then HRA is in
So,
some.
so HCR is a state agency, this
Yeah.
is a municipal process, so
Oh.
he's right, HR. But like one thing to, just to save you from all having a collective aneurysm. If it's a really good ask, and if it ends up being an HRA thing, fine, let's just get the
Yeah.
idea together.
Yeah,
And then we just look through the book, and if it goes to HRA, then fine, then so be it.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
And let them ask for it too, right, in their own way, right? So like, there's nothing precluding us from asking for something, cause they're gonna ask for it too, and if we don't ask for it, and we forget to tell them about it, it doesn't happen.
We'll see where it fits.
So this
into
is this would be an expense or a
that
capital
expense.
expense though, right? It's still a
It
service.
is a program, it is a
It's a program.
service.
Alright, so we have, we have, well, I don't know, do we, I'd argue that I'd like it higher than putting it last right now. I mean,
Right.
And-
domestic violence, homelessness is also creating child homelessness.
That's right,
with-
yeah.
And I'm not gonna say that it isn't always, a lot of single mothers with children, it could obviously be the other way too, I know that. It is mental, I mean, you're domestic violence. Oh, I said that, I said it goes both ways, I did say
Can we
that.
say?
I was careful.
Can we make,
Can we say we hold the spot 9 and then we'll work on some.
Yeah.
numbers?
We hold the spot 9 and then depending on the language, we might bump it higher, right? We keep that up.
I just want to acknowledge that our first
Will.
priority wasn't in the expense, it's been met.
Where is
with
number
an
eight?
answer
Hold
that-
on, Jessica.
Our first priority has been met with an answer that we need not do this level funding, that is up. So we're asking for something first and we're.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that we're not gonna get
Yeah. Can we make our
an ask to the city.
prioritize a little bit more strategically?
Number one on the expense, she's right, their answer was that it's HPD administered federal rental subsidy programs are subject to annual,
Yeah, I got it.
so they don't have the HPD,
So we maybe ask for something.
that we can't really get, is what, right. Well, HPD is saying like, we can't do anything about this really,
Right,
right?
they can't do anything in terms of increasing the number of.
Got you.
Right.
So do we wanna leave that at 1, I guess?
Right.
is the
What
question.
I'm
Right,
asking.
on the expense,
Create some
make
opportunity.
that number 9.
I mean, yeah,
In which case,
what do
you
you
know.
think, Angel? I'm open.
No, I'm talking to myself.
It's all right, but I like
Mind your
feedback, all right.
You know,
Then say it in your head. Use your quiet voice. If I hear it, it is my business. Jessica?
just knowing that sometimes when you hit upon a good idea and there's a little bit of traction. When it's not something that anybody has necessarily seen before, and knowing that we always have way too many expense asks. To say, this is something that solves a lot of problems potentially, do we prioritize it first? You take a chance on something that is new and you say, this matters. And you prioritize it, right? Does it get traction? Is it an opportunity to have something gain some traction? That doesn't, I don't think that reduces the importance, technically it does when you change priorities, but I don't think it reduces the importance at all of any of the other asks, but it gives a new ask a real good chance. So that's just a suggestion.
So, I agree. What about a suggestion of switching to, just at this point, that 1 with the 3, which is, that'll be, formerly 4.
And then we get, yeah, then,
Just switch that 3 with that 1.
gotcha.
Just throwing it out there.
And let me
Say
ask,
no if you want.
let me ask you another question, right? Like, is there maybe a way to change 1, keep it like the theory of it, but where they can't? Because we're asking for them to increase funding, right? I mean, that is the ask for subsidies.
Yeah.
And then they're turning around saying that they don't have the authority to basically increase that, right?
For
So,
certain subsidy.
for
programs,
certain
for
subsidy.
Federal
Right.
subsidy programs.
so is there a way we can like change the wording on that?
Yeah, it's felt federal.
Phelps?
That's,
That is city,
it's city.
so maybe we should just make sure that we act
Let
specifically.
me just say
Yeah,
something about the city first, that can be very tricky, and nobody's paying attention to it, but remember, I'm not gonna forget, this is how I had a little thing, so it's an experience. Remember when they had that other program that it was supposed to be the self-sufficiency one,
Advantage.
the advantage? And they were giving that out like it was chicken soup to everybody. And then came January or December towards that area, they took it away overnight, overnight. So imagine, we're sitting with 4 months worth of checks to a newly developed building, and this money just doesn't exist. And then you have these tenants with these vouchers that is not good, because now is the onus is on the tenant, which is right now, we still have a lot of people in the shelters because of this little problem. Okay, it was the stem of it, everybody went right back into shelters, because a lot of landlords that made them pay that rent that the city just defaulted on. Okay, and then with nothing to give them back or anything, which is where I came out with that whole fighting with, give me left.
All right, so look,
So what I'm trying to say is we just gotta make sure that the city is, that's gonna be solid.
we have,
What they're going to do with our community when, if.
okay, so we,
Problem is that not a lot of people renting to people with this also.
Yeah.
I don't wanna get too hung up on any one specific, cause we have, I think we took one off, we put a new one on, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a good, because a lot of them need to be kept on, right? So, I think we can work on prioritizing and fine tuning this, next month. I think we have basically the rubric for which we're operating on. I liked Angel's idea that what became 4, that was moved to 3, gets flipped with 1 now. And then I think we can think about the language of 1 to see if there's a better way to word it.
I'll draft,
All right.
I'll draft it and see if I can get it to stick somehow and keep it out of social
And then the
service.
domestic violence thing, I think it's just about expanding funding for that program. I think it's a pretty
Yeah.
straightforward ask, so you don't have to worry about wording that one. I think you've got there for us. And I think, so then just 1 might be something that we
Yeah,
word into
I'll,
number 3.
yeah, I'll play with the wording on 1. and
All right,
see.
then.
So we're gonna get a new updated version of this?
Everybody,
It's on the shared,
everybody's
Yeah,
review.
well, no, this,
it's on the shared drive, right?
we'll, once Angel, we'll let Will, work on the language on 1. And then he can send that to me and Angel. Since Angel took all the notes, he can reorganize it. You said you did. You said he had all the arrows. So then once he does that, we'll recirculate.
That's right.
So I think what we're gonna walk into next month is a pretty finalized document, but if anybody has new ideas in the meantime, those you can put me on the email if you want. I would suggest always CCing Angel, because I plan on having these meetings with him, so I think it'd be best if we're both seeing everything together in real time. Okay, with that being said, Beverly, and then I think I'm just gonna adjourn it for tonight, all right?
Okay. And regards to capital budget number 2, and you make a number 1 for the TIL program. We was asking that we, find out from the, needs request current status of the TIL buildings that's still in the TIL. Do I send them to you? Once I get that list, I send it to you and Angel?
You can send us a list of the ones that you know that are in need. I mean, yeah, we were asking to find that out, but if you already have information about that, that's what we're asking for, so that would be helpful. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right, so, look, yeah, I wanna try to end it, cause we did great tonight, and I wanna keep this energy high, but, thank you, everybody, so I'll adjourn it for tonight, but I'm excited, all right? We got a lot of work to
Yeah,
do.
we did 4 months of work in one meeting, so.
But this was laying the groundwork down.